Hello dear viewers, support me by subscribing to my channel and share my video if you like it, and also make sure you comment your thoughts. Now let's start the video. Jon knelt before the altar of the father, his head bowed and hidden. He gave thanks to the statues of the seven. Infiltrating the Red Keep had been easy. No one challenged a septon wearing cloth of silver vestments. He found Lucien Frey and informed him of a private message from the High Sparrow. In a small sacristy, Jon knocked Frey out with a vicious clout of the staff. He dragged the body behind some hangings and locked the room. He kept his eyes low, but glanced about the room. Arya had returned from the confessional, a giant knight trailing her. In the front pews, the royal family sat in crimson and gold. The left was full of Tyrus, and the right, the Martells, as far from Tyrion as protocol allowed. Several warriors hovered around the old lion, including the monster that Jon had last seen fleeing at the Trident. Jaime walked down the steps, leaving a nervous Tyrion. Then Joffrey jabbered into Sansa's ear as he walked her up the aisle. Jon slashed the pouch of wildfire, and green began to drip on the ground. Jon faced the crowd, with the staff in his left hand. Sansa kept any sign of grief or fear from her pale, drawn face. Her silver dress was hidden under the gray and white cloak. Her escort wore a crown of gold antlers encrusted with rubies and black diamonds. It was either too large for his head or his neck tilted to the left. A smirking Joffrey left Sansa at the bottom of the steps and returned to his seat. Tyrion offered his hands to Sansa as she walked up to the altar. She refused, looking at the ground. The dwarf grimaced slightly and reached for a giant wedding cloak of crimson velvet, worked with lions and bordered with gold, satin, and rubies. Jon slammed the iron butt of the staff on the ground, and the eyes in the room turned to him. Sansa's mouth gaped in shock. "We're gathered here today before the father and mother. The seven-pointed star teaches that the father grants justice and the mother offers mercy. But there has been little justice or mercy in King's Landing. None for Ned Stark, none for Aelia Martell, none for Aegon or Rhaenys Targaryen. All four were murdered by the Iron Throne." Stunned murmurs were interrupted by King Joffrey's screech. "Ned Stark was a traitor. A false confession to a false king. You are the son of Cersei and Jaime Lannister. You have no right to any crown," Jon retorted. He leaned the staff against the table and grabbed the holy water sprinkler with his right hand and lifted a burning candle in the left. Knights and guards drew their swords and rushed for the altar. Gold cloaks, white cloaks, and red cloaks surged forward. "How dare you utter such lies? I will have your head," an outraged Tywin Lannister thundered. "You have tried before. The Starks send their regards," Jon said. Jon swung the holy water sprinkler back and forth, and sheets of bright green liquid rained down from the unsealed holes onto the oncoming soldiers. No one knew why, until Jon held the candle high and blew the flame into the sprays of wildfire. Jets of dark emerald flames gushed out, and guards screamed as armor and skin caught fire. Burning men ran into the horrified crowd as the sept descended into chaos and noise. Jon threw the candle behind him, igniting a trail of liquid to the statues. He dropped the now empty holy water sprinkler and retrieved a clay jar from his pouch and tossed it high into the burning brazier, hanging at the center of the room. The jar landed and immediately exploded, bathing the sept in an eerie green light as shards of clay, glass, and hot metal rained down. "Run," he said to Sansa. Jon ripped off the robes and tossed them in the direction of the Lannisters. Green liquid spewed from the pouch, and more fires ignited in the pews. As they rushed down the center of the aisle, Jon threw the crozier at the feet of Oberin Martell. Jon and Sansa joined the exodus with Arya, Brienne, and Owen, not far behind. Bystanders gawked at the smoldering green flames in the royal sept. Jon and his sisters disappeared into the crowd. Tyrion peered warily from under the altar table. The flames still burned hazily, and the sept was bathed in green, but the chamber slowly regained a semblance of order. He checked once again his doublet, trousers, belt, and boots, and thanked the gods his clothes were not drenched. "Tyrion!" Jaime hurled the table to the side. The white armor was streaked with soot, and the white cloak half burned, but his brother had escaped unscathed. "Perhaps the gods wish me to stay a bachelor," Tyrion quipped to an unamused crowd. Bronn and Pod had helped Jaime in the search. That was Snow. How in the Seven Hells did he get wildfire? Bronn said. An excellent question. Could the pyromancers be playing both sides? Lyanna and his acolytes were more pompous than duplicitous. Still, everyone was susceptible to gold. A horrible thought struck Tyrion. What if Snow, as a skilled maester, discovered the recipe for wildfire? I am glad you are unharmed, Jaime said. A dozen guards died, and more suffered injuries. What about her family, or the other nobles? Tyrion asked. Jaime responded by leading the way to a large group of Tyrells, Martells, and Lannisters surrounded by guards and toadies. No one was missing. Lord Tywin's pale green eyes glittered with anger and rage. Tyrion had never seen his father so close to losing control. Are all Lannister weddings so full of excitement? Compared to this, Margaery's wedding will be a dull affair. The Queen of Thorns said, It was quite a show. I might be wrong, but a wedding ends in a bedding, not a runaway bride. Luckily, I have a keepsake. The Red Viper smirked as he held the Septon's staff. We will drag Sansa Stark back to the altar, and her bastard brother will beg for the stranger's kiss before his head lands on a spike. Cersei said, They cannot escape, your grace. Gold cloaks guard the steps. We will find them. Trant said. Why did we have no idea Jon Snow was in King's Landing? Tywin asked. My lord, I investigated other potential threats. I saw no trace of Jon Snow, Varys said. How could he have gotten wildfire? Tywin said. Does he have wildfire? The Red Viper asked rhetorically. He only threw one jar and had some more liquid stored in that mace. The Prince of Dorne is correct. With more wildfire, Snow could have burned down the entire sept. Perhaps the alchemists only sold him a few vials. Pyxell said. That is not the only possible explanation, Tyrion said. He may have more, but simply chose not to use it. Why would he only have a few vials? I want the bastard's head, Joffrey yelled. I want him tortured and torn from limb to limb before he dies. A large vein bulged on his nephew's forehead. Enough. First we need to find him. Tywin Lannister led the way to the doors of the sept. The yard overflowed with hundreds and hundreds of men and women in motion. Some watched the sept, others pushed against the gold cloaks, and even more swirled about chaotically like currents in an eddy. Tyrion saw a lady covered in stark gray and white, and then another, and then another. At least a dozen women wore colors akin to Sansa Stark's maiden cloak. One of them was his former whore, Shae, wearing a purple dress underneath. What the? Jaime asked. All the highborn nobles looked about the mass of people, straining to find Sansa Stark. The trouble was that they saw too many of them, and most were moving in the crowd. The white and gray cloaks stood out in a sea of color. Oh, well played, Jon Snow. Well played, Varys giggled. His lord father turned, his face cold and furious. Did you tell him? Tell who? Tyrion responded. Snow, you allowed Sansa Stark to wear a cloak of gray and white. Somehow, Snow managed to sneak those cloaks here in the Red Keep, Tywin said. No. Tyrion's denial was equally forceful. You allowed whores to come to my wedding to humiliate me. One of them is wearing a Stark cloak. Or the other one's wearing gray and white also whores? Because if so, the fault belongs to the man who brought them to the castle. Tywin glared at a squirming Baelish. My lord, I had no idea of this. I only asked for a few ladies who had known Tyrion well. Tyrion sought the pleasure of paid women, but he had not fucked a dozen women since his arrival at King's Landing. Where had the whores come from? The loud, shrill yell came from the crowd. Look, Lady Sansa, a woman in a white gown wearing a white and gray cloak and veil dashed for the White Sword Tower. 1,000 golden dragons for Sansa Stark's capture. The cry echoed through the castle. The crowd parted ways as hundreds of warriors gave chase. Stop! Jaime, Tyrion hissed, pulling on the remnants of his brother's cloak. Tyrion, as commander of the King's Guard, my duty is to capture the girl, Jaime said. This doesn't make sense. Think, Jaime, who would pay 1,000 dragons for Sansa Stark? Father would, or the Iron Throne, or even you. Jaime's eyes widened in realization. White Sword Tower lay a few hundred paces from the royal septa. A mass of guards had rushed over, certain that the girl could be trapped easily in the conical structure. After all, the tower was at the corner of the Red Keep and housed only 7 apartments, 6 of them sparse sleeping cells. A horde of armored men led by Meryn Trant reached the tower. Tyrion did not see the crossbow, only the flaming bolt that shot out from the shadows. A wooden cask bound in iron rested at the bottom of the winding steps. The bolt hit the barrel, and the barrel exploded into a raging green inferno. Dozens of men were hurled into the air like some hungry giant had plucked them into the sky, and bits of pieces of scorched armor with blackened body parts rained down. A flaming green demon rose, its head nearly the height of the 4-story tower, with tendrils that reached out to kiss the once eager men. They died so quickly that there was no time to scream. Instead, the crowd shrieked in fear and ran in a mad dash for the steps, overwhelming the few remaining gold cloaks, not gawking at the dead. Even hundreds of feet away, the heat was horrid. The demon appeared to bow, and Tyrion thought for a brief moment that the carnage was over. Then he heard a short, sharp hiss, like air being sucked through a tube, and a deafening roar went up. A cloud of dark emerald rose up behind the demon, and the windows of the towers shattered into broken glass and charred stone. The upper walls tottered and fell like a stumbling graybeard wreathed in a cloak of jade. The crash shook the entire keep, and a cloud of superheated dust and smoke blew over the sept patches of wildfire littered the ground, and the stench of burnt flesh overwhelmed his nostrils, despite many of the dead being covered by rubble. All that remained was a broken stub of molten slag where white stone had once stood. White's sword tower was gone. Well, that settles it. Jon Snow does have wildfire. And quite a bit of it, the Red Viper chuckled. The Wintertown crew had done well. Below the steps, Jon counted at least 36 wearing a white and gray cloak. That did not include the smiling sand snake. Usse looked properly Dornish with orange and red over her hidden white gown. The Sphinx had raced to White Sword Tower and discarded her cloak there, after ducking into the shadows. They were all gathered now, even the stunned Brienne, ready to go. Good work, Alleras. But now we have to hurry, Jon said. He took the hand of the girl standing to his right, her face. Brienne, take her out of the castle. She knows where to go. There are 2 horses stabled outside, my lady, at the corner before the hook. The alley leads to River Row, and from there, right along the castle walls to the docks, Clytus said. But won't the gates be watched? Brienne asked. Of course they will. And if you were Brienne, you might be stopped. But you are Surgeon Kettleblack with a white cloak, escorting a highborn lady back to her mansion. Jon said. We will escort you out the gates, Lady Brienne. Clytus said. Cletus, Denis, and Shane seek out the little birds and bring them to the ships. They should know you from this morning, Jon said. Milord, what if they don't come? We have silver stags and candied plums, but what if they run back to Varys? Dane said. Do the best you can. These are hungry children. If we can free them from the spider's web, we should. Better to save some than none. Sansa Stark watched in stunned silence as Brienne walked off with Jane Poole, shadowed by the Wintertown boys. She raised her white and gray veil, only to be stopped by Jon. Sansa, don't show your face outside. Rouzier knows the escape route. Chet, go with them. What about us? Owen asked. Snow, Dorne wants blood. The Mountain or Tywin Lannister. Alleras said. Lord Tywin will be surrounded by many men, but the Mountain, if you can get him alone, I will take Owen and distract the Lannisters. Use that time to set a trap for the Mountain. The best bait would be Sansa Stark. Where are they going? Alleras asked, pointedly. The Tower of the Hand, Jon said. Then I will join them. Don't worry. Your sisters will be gone before the Mountain comes. Very well, Jon handed Ox 5 jars of wildfire. Half of what I have left. A kiss, Snow, before parting. Alice lifted her head and their lips locked for a long moment. I would kiss you too, Snow, but you are not leaving me. Owen quipped. Enough of that, Owen. Goodbye, sisters. Good luck, Alleras, Jon said as they parted. Tyrion wondered why the 7 kingdoms were cursed with idiots for kings. Robert Baratheon was a piss-poor ruler but had never shown fear. After the tower's destruction, Joffrey demanded that his personal safety be the top priority. Worrying about survival in the face of a wildfire explosion was sensible. Revealing that fear by cowering was not particularly when Joffrey ignored Margaery and ordered around the Lannisters. Where are my guards? Why are they not here, protecting me? Joffrey yelled. Everyone near the tower is dead. Trent, Moore, and Blount were next to the cask when it exploded. The only white cloaks alive are Jaime, Sir Loras, or in Dorne, Tyrion said. What about the Hound? He can guard me, and not the wolf bitch. Jaime answered first. Sandor Clegane ran out of the doors. My dog abandoned his post. I will have his head. Joffrey ranted. Your Grace, Clegane does not like fires. Not since he was burnt as a boy. Jaime eyed the mountain with disgust. Perhaps you should retire to Maegor's Holdfast. Will I be safe there from wildfire? Joffrey asked. Your Grace, Maegor's is the strongest place in the Red Keep. There is no way Jon Snow can reach you there, Varys said. Unless he has already placed wildfire in the Holdfast and is waiting to spring a trap, Oberin said. After all, members of the royal family have died in Maegor's before. It is not possible to sneak into Maegor's Holdfast, Prince Oberin, Varys said. Did you think it was possible for Sansa Stark to be rescued at her wedding? Oberin retorted. The king will return to Maegor's. Tywin dismissed Joffrey. Pyxell, locate the pyromancer Hallie. Find out how Snow might have procured the wildfire. As you wish, my lord. The Grand Maester left for the rookery. They descended to the lower castle, the guards testing the steps before nobles crossed. Near the sept there had been a dozen women wearing gray and white. Below the steps, there were hundreds. Even worse, discarded veils and cloaks were strewn on the courtyards. The destruction of the tower had cost them precious time. Arrest anyone wearing Stark colors, Tywin Lannister ordered. My lord, the whores know nothing about the plot to rescue Sansa Stark. They were given garments by boys with pushcarts. Ser Jaxlin Bywater said. Then why are they wearing those infernal clothes? Tywin asked. They were told it was to please Lord Baelish and King Joffrey, and paid 2 silver stags. The children were also paid as well, Bywater said. Children? What children? Tyrion asked. Children who told the whores the throne wished them to wear gray and white. They brought the women to the carts. Street urchins, my lord Hand. They have all disappeared. I want every inch of the Red Keep searched. The whores will shed their cloaks. Anyone wearing Stark colors will be tied to a post and flogged, Tywin said. Just then, a vial fell from the sky and smashed 20 feet away, bursting in a noxious flame. Another jar shattered against the red walls, staining the stones green before the wildfire ignited. Panicked guards scattered and small folk screamed in terror. Snow is still in the castle, Jaime said. He must be throwing wildfire from a tower window. But which one? From the courtyard, a dozen towers could be seen. Drum towers, corner forts, barracks, the small council chambers, the holdfast, the Tower of the Hand. We will have to search them one by one, starting with the closest building. Ser Loras, come with me. Iron, sheath his sword. If you want to get yourself killed, Kinslayer, go right ahead. But leave my grandson out of it, the Queen of Thorns said firmly. But we have to find Snow. He is our best hope of recovering Sansa Stark, Jaime said. He will pour a bucket of wildfire on your head and throw you a torch, or shoot you with a crossbow. Probably both. Don't be a fool. Olenna Tyrell refused to back down. The old lady is right, Bronn said to Tyrion. I would not chase Snow for 1,000 dragons or a dozen whores. We're lucky he didn't kill all of us in the sept. Lord Taxleyan ended the discussion. Clegane, find Jon Snow. Kill him. What about the girl? The Brood asked. Bring her back alive. Kill anyone who tries to stop you. Oberyn Martell waited until the Lannisters and their Tyrell lackeys left the royal sept. And Joffrey had already departed with Cersei and Tommen. Oberyn's hands gripped the sturdy ash, the crozier. With a simple twist, the hook snapped off, leaving a 6-foot shaft. The top was tapered 3 inches and smoothed into a smaller sanded circle. He took the package from Taillé, they unwrapped the rope, revealing a well-crafted steel blade, 2 feet long. Nokria and Taillé admired the sharp edges and point. The Red Viper's eyes went lower, and he whistled. Jon Snow may have only 16 name days, but he deserves a steel link, Oberyn said, examining the head. The socket is chamfered to round the bottom edges. This is well made. Oberyn swiftly mounted the spear blade. He deftly turned the head on the pole until the parts joined into one whole. He bound the blade and the shaft with rope and then took out a tiny veil and dripped black venom onto the blade. Father, I found this rat. Barbara Martell dragged back Pycelle by his scrawny, waddled neck. Her left hand was clamped over the mouth and the snowy beard. She hurled him to the floor. The Grand Maester begged for mercy. Please don't hurt me. I have done nothing wrong. You helped kill my sister and her children, Oberyn said. It wasn't me. It was Lord Chancellor Gregor. Pycelle babbled. All I did for the realm. You did it for the Lannisters. What did Tywin have on you? Did he pay you gold, women? Oberin took hold of the bejeweled maester's chain, a heavy, thick rope of 24 lengths from cheap tin to white platinum. He twisted the chain until Pycelle's face purpled. The maester lost control of his body in death, staining the red velvet and ermine robe with shit and piss. The Red Viper tossed away the dead man and took up the spear. Illyria touched his left arm. Oberin, my love, are you certain you want to fight the mountain? Fight him! I am going to kill him. Manticore venom is deadly, and the moment it reaches his heart, the mountain is a dead man. Oberin replied. But he might not die, father, Tywin said. You have thickened the venom with sorcery, and the mountain is enormous. It may take him hours to die. His armor is incredibly thick. Under the plate armor, he wears chain and leather. They say he is stronger than any man alive in Westeros. Naim added. The Red Viper leaned the staff against a statue of some aspect of the Seven and took Illaria's face tenderly with both hands. It may be that I die fighting the mountain, and if that shall pass, I will miss you and my lovely sand snakes. But let me live deep while I live. Let me know the embrace of your arms, the mad clash of battle, the sweet joy of revenge. I am content with my life. And if I die, I will dance in hell or wait for you in heaven. Oberin said. Wedding preparations at the Tower of the Hand had stopped, with frightened servants fleeing for their lives. Wild rumors spread that the White Wolf planned to burn down the entire Red Keep. Few men were brave enough to face wildfire, and none of those were sellswords. Arya ransacked the dresser, while her sister disrobed, taking off first the cloak and veil, the grey duskin slippers, and finally the ivory samite wedding gown, leaving her only in silk, small clothes behind the golden wood screen. Arya threw over a revealing bright orange robe, with a deep plunging cleavage line that slashed down to the belly. A cinched feathered belt and a copper collar completed the ensemble. Arya ripped out the needles holding together the tightly coiffed and braided hair and put in their place a cheap strip of copper. Ouch! Sansa, her locks now an unruly mass of auburn curls, looked at the garish, colorful clothes with dismay. I look like a whore. Best disguise for where we are going. Hurry up, Arya said. Begging your pardon, but why does the imp have whore's clothes? Chet's face was turned toward the chamber door, his red face averted from Lady Sansa. For a whore, no doubt, men have needs. Allery said. Sansa stepped out from behind the screen. With uncombed hair, a tight-fitting dress, and cheap trinkets, she could be mistaken for a brothel worker from the Street of Silk. You could use some rouge or perfume, Allery said. No need, not for wear. Arya bit her lip and said no more. Alice chuckled. The secret passages. I am not an idiot. How did you know? Jon didn't tell you, Arya demanded. It is no great mystery. When the Red Keep was finished, Maegor the Cruel invited the builders and craftsmen to a lavish feast. At the end of the 3 days, he killed them all. It is obvious he had something to hide, Allers said. But if the maesters know, why are they still a secret? Arya asked. A rumor about spies in the walls is one thing. Mapping out the passages is another, likely. The Targaryen kings used the tunnels. Why didn't Robert do anything? Well, he cared more about drinking and whoring than ruling, Allers said. Arya made her decision. I will show you the secret passage. It is a small door in the hearth. You take the tunnel to the left for a short distance, and then climb down a lot of steps. Khalaraz bowed. Thank you for your trust. Good luck, Arya and Sansa. Arya opened the hearth. Follow me, Sansa. Chet will be behind you. She went down the narrow staircase. At the bottom, on the mosaic of the dragon, 2 yellow eyes greeted them. Lyanna turned and led the way west. Brienne found the stable near a sign of a rack of dark antlers on green. They had gone through the gates unchallenged, a testament to both the White Cloak and the overwhelmed guards. Brienne only took the great helm after they exited the castle. The Winter Town boys left soon after. Before they disappeared into the crowds of small folk, Brienne saw them rounding up younger urchins. Silver flashed in the hands of the northern boys. A tow-haired stable boy brought out 2 saddled horses, a sturdy bay mare, and a chestnut palfrey. Before she could retrieve a copper star from her pouch, the boy gasped and ran away. She turned to see a familiar scarred face. The Hound drew his sword. Give me back Sansa Stark. Brienne would not fail her oath to Lady Catelyn and House Stark. She would save Sansa or die trying. No, Saxar, I will not let you drag the lady back to that mockery of a wedding. The Hound grunted and Brienne readied her blade for battle. A frightened voice stopped them as the girl raised her veil, revealing dark hair and a skinny face. I am not Sansa Stark. Brienne whirled back in shock. What? Sandor Clegane lowered his sword. Don't you even know who you are guarding? I thought that was Lady Sansa, Brienne stammered. The Hound's laugh was a raspy snarl. The Starks tricked you. They expected you to be captured and killed. The girl shook her head. Not true. I would give my life for Sansa. But Arya pointed out that if they found me, all I would be is a whore with a gray and white cloak. They would let us go. Rosia Stark is here too. The Starks have balls of steel. What is your name, girl? Jane Poole? Clegane squinted. Poole, you are the steward's girl that Baelish had raped over and over. How dare you say such a thing to a lady? Brienne cried. The Hound rolled his eyes. He speaks the truth. I do not have to pretend to be a whore. Jane shivered. What do you plan to do with me, sir? I will not let you take her back to the Lannisters, Brienne said. Why would I? There is no reward for Jane's Poole. Where are you going, girl? Brienne interposed herself between Clegane and the hesitant girl. What should we tell you, so you can betray us to the Iron Throne? The Hound spat on the ground. Even a dog gets tired of being kicked. I liked the little bird. If I know she is safe, I will let you go. Brienne looked at him with shock. You wear a white cloak. You are a Kingsguard. Why would you abandon your service to King Joffrey? Joffrey is a cunt. The Lannisters are all cunts. Now maybe the Starks are too, and maybe they are not. Are the Starks cunts? The Starks are an honorable house, Brienne said, ignoring the Hound's crude remarks. Oh, cut the horse shit. What do you think, girl? Clegane said. Lord Stark was an honest and honorable man. His sons take after him, and Sansa has always been my good friend, Jane replied. Sandor Clegane considered her words for a moment. Well, I would rather take my chances with the Starks than listen to Joffrey rant. My horse is tied up near the city walls on the rush. I will get it and bring you back to the little bird. Lady Poole, I do not know if we can trust Clegane. He is an oath-breaker, Brienne said. Oh, stop being a Nancy. I am the one breaking the oath, not you. If I go back to the Red Keep without Sansa Stark, I will be punished. If I run away from King's Landing, the Lannisters will send men to hunt me down, and if I fight Jon Snow, he will burn me alive. Seems to me better to escort you idiots wherever you are going, the Hound said. Brienne sighed. The mission to rescue Sansa had not gone the way of songs. The Stark girls were gone. Luring the mountain was simple wildfire. Alraise touched a lit torch to wall hangings. Flames spread from the sweet rushes on the floor to the canopied bed. Smoke covered the dressers, the screen, a chest of books, and the hearth. The fire would seal off the secret passage so that no one could follow. She walked down the floors of the tower, splashing the vials of wildfire wherever she went. In the solar, she shattered the golden-tinted round window so that the glass fell on the bailey below. On the upper floors of the tower, green tongues of flame could be seen. There was risk, of course, in burning down the Tower of the Hand. For one, the fires might spread out of control. Greyjoy Clegane might come with a band of soldiers. Allarez trusted that she could escape one man, but a dozen would be more difficult to elude. And finally, she did not know how soon her father would arrive. She continued to set fires and waited for the mountain. How did you discover these passages? Owen said in wonder. My sister Arya discovered them when Ned Stark was Hand of the King. Jon replied, after tossing the last jars, Jon and Owen made their way to the castle's upper levels through the tunnels. They exited near the Riverwalk. Few guards remained above the steps, as they had rushed to the yards below. They walked to the Maiden Vault. Do the other Reachmen stay here with you? Jon asked. Mostly it is Lady Margaery and her cousins. She has many, many cousins, Owen said. Jon pointed to the group returning from the sept. Look, the Teixelries are coming. When Owen turned, Jon hit him on the back of the head with the crossbow butt. He set Owen down on the ground and checked the pulse. Owen would wake, perhaps in an hour, more than enough time. The Tyrells wore green velvets trimmed with sable and ermine for the men and silks and chiffons for the ladies. The entire party was decked out in the wealth of Highgarden mantles with golden thread, jeweled flowers set in armor and brooches, and helms chased with gold. Now that Sansa Stark has escaped, we can marry her to Willis. Mates Tyrell boomed. Hush, father, you cannot say such things in the Red Keep. The girl spoke in a low voice. The old lady walking hand in hand with the girl only glared at Mace. We do not know whether our offer would be accepted. After her ordeal, she may simply wish to return home. Garland said, Not accept Willis. Mace turned incredulously. Willis is the heir to Highgarden, and Lady Sansa would become sister-in-law to the Queen. She would also be sister-in-law to the King, Olenna said scathingly. One of the 7-foot giants went to open the tall, curved doors of the maiden vault. Jon darted from the shadows and grabbed the girl by her cloak, wrenching her from her grandmother's arm. Margaery stifled a scream when she felt the cocked tip of the crossbow part her golden-brown curls and rest on her pale neck. Good to see you again, Garling. Lord Tyrion, Lady Azir, Loras, you must be the famous Queen of Thorns. Jon Snow, we thought you ran down the steps, Garland said. I did, I came back up. Unhand her, or I will carve you into pieces. Loras said, drawing his sword, You cannot reach me before I shoot. Your sister would die first. Stay back, Loras, Margaery said. Olenna stepped in front of the gawking Lord Mace. You have already freed your sister. What do you want, Snow? We will shower you in gold for my granddaughter. Do you really think I care about gold? Jon backed away, using the girl as cover. I need to borrow the lady. Do nothing rash and she will be unharmed. Bastard, you won't escape with my sister. I will. Loras stopped his rant when Garland placed an arm to block his brother's advance. Snow, what do you want with Margaery? She has done nothing against House Stark. She was kind to Lady Sansa, Garland said. Kind enough to attend her wedding. I need Lady Margaery for only a short time. Do not raise the alarm for 1,000 beats. They departed, leaving the shocked Tyrells behind. They passed the kennels and stables and turned left at the small godswood with young elm and alder trees. They walked past oblivious servants, the crossbow hidden under the green cloak. Do you plan to kill me? Margaery asked, her voice surprisingly calm. No, my lady, I would prefer you unharmed. Her shoulders relaxed. Do you mean to steal me and take me north as some prize of war? Jon snickered. To marry Robb Stark. This isn't some story of Jonquil and her fool Florian. Then where are you taking me? How do you plan to escape the castle if you are going away from the steps? Margaery asked. Who said we are escaping? Jon opened the bronze and oak doors of the great hall. Alory's heirs heard loud footfalls on the floor underneath. She regretted not bringing her golden heart bow. She could core an apple at 100 paces with a 3-foot shaft. Still, no daughter of Oberin Martell was helpless. She held a loop with her left hand and whirled the rope with her right hand. A steel dagger was tied to the end, and the rope dart reached 15 feet long. Heavy steps rang out on the staircase. The rope twirled faster and faster. Finally, when the great helm appeared, she placed the right hand on the left shoulder and turned the other shoulder. The rope whipped about the left side and came around the right hip. The knife rushed forward, hitting Gregor Clegane hard on the chest. The blade bounced off the steel breastplate. The mountain roared in anger and rushed forward. Olorys jerked the blade back and whipped the rope around the armored knees like a bolo. She pulled and the mountain fell. Olorys spun the rope quickly, smashing the knife down on the helmet. Again the knife bounced ineffectively. The mountain rose. I am going to kill you, girl. I am going to rape you, and then smash your fucking head in. Castellers cursed inwardly. She could stay out of the mountain's reach, but the rope dart could not penetrate the thick armor. She ducked under the blade and ran down the stairs. Sir Gregor Clegane followed, tromping down to the small hall, but Aelers was not alone. There were 3 other girls and a tall, slender, dark-haired man holding a long spear. My name is Oberin Martell. You killed my sister. Prepare to die. The mountain laughed at the puny opponent. As Clegane stepped forth, the man spun the spear quickly and then smashed the sharp edge against the visor. The blade did not penetrate the thick helm, but the mountain's head snapped back. Clegane warily raised the enormous shield and approached. The battle was on. Alia! Martell! Say her name. The Red Viper repeated as he thrust, spun, and dodged. Her father circled and jabbed, forcing the big man to turn and turn again. Oberyn landed many hits, but the spear could only dent the heavy plate. The mountain responded with loud grunts and powerful swipes. Clegane was massive and surprisingly quick. Her father was more skilled at fighting. Still, if the mountain landed a blow, it might cleave the Red Viper in half. Sister, the flames are coming. Rather lovely. Tyrion pointed at the green tongues of wildfire that spread down the circular staircase. I wish I had a spear, Oberin cursed. I would love to stab the mountain in the back. That's it. Alaris declared. Daggers have no chance, but I know how we can help, father. Find a staff or a long piece of wood. Oberin ripped the planks out of a long trestle bench. Alaris took out the last vial of wildfire. She poured some over the steel dagger at the end of the long rope and the rest on the ends of the wooden slats. The wildfire sparked and the weapons began to burn. Alaris spun her rope and smashed the flaming knife on a giant pauldron. Oberin swung and slammed the makeshift staff into the broad back. But it wasn't the force or the knife that bothered the mountain. It was the fire. Stay out of reach and burn him. Cook him alive in the armor, Alaris said. The sand snakes attacked the tiring Gregor Clegane from behind. The flames took their toll even as their sire spun his spear faster and faster, aiming for joints, gaps, and any weak spots. Alaris didn't even bother to swing. She looped the rope about the massive metal vambraces, rebraces, and pauldrons, allowing the wildfire to burn. Confess! You killed her! You raped her! Who gave the order? Who? Oberin. Martell cried. Suddenly, Clegane surged forward and lashed out, barely missing her father's head. The Viper smiled and rammed the spear directly against a gap between the folds protecting the waist and the tassets covering the thigh. At last, the spear broke through and the tip cut the mountain's belly. Oberin attacked again and again, twisting the blade, thrusting the point, and slashing the edges. Cuts could be seen on the belly and thighs. As the beast howled in pain, Oberin smashed down with her wooden club on the left elbow, jarring loose the shield. Confess, you killed my sister. You raped her. Who gave the order? Oberin yelled. The mountain stood up, blood and scorch marks on his armor. With a freakish burst, he rushed out, shattering the stained glass window as he plunged several floors down over the ramparts, the massive body crashing into stone and earth with a gigantic thud. Air rushed into the small hall, and the green flames spread further along the high-vaulted ceiling. Father, we have to get out. Yaros cried. The wildfire is burning hotter. The mountain is as good as dead. Nothing can survive manticore venom, Tyrion said serenely. Good as dead is not dead, and the mountain never confessed. He never named Tywin. Oberin and his daughters rushed down the flight of stairs and burst into the yard. The mountain was nowhere to be seen. The Iron Throne was a poorly constructed monstrosity. It was not just the fanged blades and barbs that jutted out the sides and the top, a crest of twisted swords hanging over the king. The steps were chipped, and the entire structure tilted to the right. Even the chair was cold and hard, with sharp edges that could cut arms and legs. It was a damnably uncomfortable seat. After boring the oak and bronze doors, Jon tied Margaery's hands to a column in front of the dais. Then he went to the door behind the throne and rolled out 3 casks he stored that morning. Using a pulley, he suspended the 2 larger barrels in the air with ropes. The 3rd cask rested on the top step. Jon kicked it over to the side and removed the bunghole. Is that wildfire? Marjorie cried. Yes, he descended the steps. The girl bowed her head. How much do those barrels hold? I don't know, my lady. Your grace, Marjorie said. Pardon? I am betrothed to the king. If I am to die, I would prefer to be called your grace. It is my title. Jon smiled. I promise not to harm you. I will keep my word, your grace. She was lost in her thoughts. I have always wanted to be queen. I guess that will never be. Why do you want to be queen? So I can help others. As queen, I can give alms to the poor and provide for orphans and widows. I can be a patron of the arts and the citadel. You want to be the good Queen Alysanne? That won't happen, Jon said. Why not? The good queen was married to the old king. You are betrothed to Joffrey, who is more Maegor than Jacaerys. Joffrey might not become another Maegor. Joffrey is a coward, a weakling, and has no dragons. But in temperament, he is like Maegor the Cruel. The war could have ended with a simple trade of prisoners. Joffrey showed his true self by beheading Ned Stark. People do not change when they become king. Cracks appeared on the oak as a ram battered the giant doors of the great hall. The wood warped, and the metal bolts groaned as the steady pounding dented the frame. Finally, the thick iron-reinforced pole tore a small hole, and hands groped for an opening. Finally, it took them long enough, Jon said. The doors burst open, Tyrell guards, Lannister men, and the watch poured into the room. Behind Sir Loras and Sir Jaime, the other nobles could be seen. Tywin, though, was heavily guarded and in the rear. Jon waited until the knights closed the distance. "Surrender, Snow," Saudé yelled. "Unhand my sister," Loras said. "Stop, Loras." Marger's voice echoed in the great hall. "He has wildfire. He will kill us all." Close enough, Jon thought. With a knife, he cut through the ropes tied to the pulley. The two casks swung down and then arced into the air, crashing down on the black and yellow carpet. The barrels broke, splashing green liquid all over the chamber. Pools of green spilled out, covering much of the floor. Jon lit the torch and touched it to the Iron Throne. Wildfire had oozed out of the small cask, seeping into the iron and steel. A loud whoosh could be heard, and the fire ignited, all along the spikes and edges. The Iron Throne burned, an emerald light that flickered, like a bonfire to the old gods and the new. It was an eerie sight. Dancing flames kissing the steel of 100, perhaps 1,000 blades. Jon raised his arm again, and his intent was obvious to all. He hurled the touch to land in the spreading pool of green. "Stop, Snow. You will kill us all," Tyrion shouted. His was not the only scream. Jon dashed away, slamming the door behind him. He left before the torch hit the ground. The torch whirled and whirled. The guards nearest ran for cover, even as Sir Loras rushed to his sister. Tyrion's boots were wet, and his doublet was drenched. There was no hope. He shut his eyes and said a prayer as he waited for the stranger. Tyrion wondered if the Septons lied and that hell would be some nameless void without wine. He heard a faint hiss, but felt no great heat. His skin had not melted and his hair was not on fire. Tyrion cautiously opened his eyes. The torch had landed and sputtered. He reached for the dying torch. "Tyrion, be careful. It could still explode," Jaime shouted. His brother stood in front of the burning throne while the Terras freed Lady Margaery. "I think not." Tyrion dipped a finger into the liquid. It tasted tart, crisp, and earthy. "My lord, do not drink wildfire," Podrick cried. "This is not wildfire. This is white grape juice," Tyrion said to the astonished crowd. "But the throne is on fire," Jaime said. Green flames had leaped high into the jagged nest of blades on the back of the throne, and twisted metal began to bend under the heat. Snow used wildfire for the Iron Throne, but the other two casks only have grape juice. Tyrion licked his finger. Newly fermented. They grow these grapes on the quiet isle. Why would he do such a thing? Tywin approached. "Do what? Burn down the throne?" "The Starks hate Joffrey. Sitting on the throne will be impossible, with all the melted slag. No. Why would he go through all of this?" "The 3 casks. Barring the door, Tywin said. "Simple. Snow lured us here so his sister has more time to escape. Sansa Stark is long gone from the Red Keep." Tyrion said. "But where did he go?" Mace Tyrell asked. "There is a door behind the Iron Throne reserved only for the king, leading to a network of tunnels. Aerys never allowed anyone to use the exit, and Baratheon never cared." Jaime said, "A secret passage. Varys would know all the secret ways of the Red Keep." "Wait, where is he?" Tyrion said. The spider was missing. The yellow and red carriage, pulled by 2 dappled ponies, trotted down the muddy way and stopped at the edge of Fishmonger's Square. Well short of the mud gate, the driver jumped down, dressed in garments more suited for a longshoreman than a coachman. Chet looked around warily and then opened the doors. Arya exited first and helped Sansa out. Shopkeepers were closing their stalls in the fish market and carrying crates and casks to the boats in the wharves. The square was not as crowded as the morning, when the herring sellers and oystermen haggled with small folk, but the sailors were noisy at all hours. Tall tales had spread of the imp's wedding, each more outrageous than the next. Lordia liked the one where Sansa turned into a wolf with bat-like wings and flew out a tower window after biting Joffrey. They passed the mud gate with Chet pushing a wheelbarrow laden with cod and crabs. The Wolfwind and her sister ships, the Jolly Salt and the North Star, were docked at the wharves. Maturin Manderley, eager and ready to sail, greeted them on top of the gangplank. Chet joined Clytus and the other boys, and tended to the hungry children huddled in the holds. Arya and Sansa rested on the quarterdeck and waited. Gregor Clegane convulsed and howled in pain. It was not the impact of the fall or the burnt flesh on his back and shoulders. The cuts from the long spear had blackened, and the wounds were oozing pus. The mountain fled to a guardhouse and demanded a maester. When a gold cloak hesitated, Clegane smashed his face into the wall, breaking a nose and half a dozen teeth. The guardhouse emptied as the other watchmen rushed to comply. The mountain, tired of the injured man's moaning, lashed out with a steel boot until the cries stopped. Sarah, a pimply brown-haired squire, approached. The mountain's hand shot out and grabbed the lad by the neck. "Where's the maester?" "I don't know about no maester, sire, but I saw your brother." The chunky boy squealed. "I saw him from the castle walls. He was riding with another knight. I think they had Sansa Stark." "The Stark bitch? Are you sure?" The mountain squeezed harder. "Why else would the Hound leave the castle? He was guarding her the past 2 weeks." The mountain stood up, the hatred of his brother outweighing the pain. "Saddle my horse. We are going after the girl." The Hound squinted behind them. The Tower of the Hand wore a crown of green flame. He is not alone in looking. River Row was packed full of staring fishmongers and harbor rats, jabbering and gossiping. The horses trudged slowly through throngs of small folk. "How much wildfire does Snow have?" Jane Poole only looked down at the ground. Brienne answered, "I don't know. I didn't even know he was in King's Landing." "Do you know anything about the rescue?" The Hound jeered. Brienne shook her head. "Then how did you get Kettle Black's cloak and coat?" "It is not my place to tell you," asked Snow. "We are following his orders." "Good. Might be we get out of this city alive." The Hound tried to push his stallion forward in the sluggish traffic. Miles behind them, the mountain had more success, parting the crowd. He smelt the perfume before he heard any footsteps. The eunuch was damnably quiet, but the fragrance was nauseating, foul and sweet, a mix of rosewater and lilacs, with sweat and piss. Jon readied his crossbow, hoping for a clean shot, but the dank, gloomy cellar, holding the dragon skulls, offered many places to hide. "I see your shadow, Jon Snow. Well played indeed. The whores were a nice touch. You used my own little birds to infiltrate the castle." Jon spun to the sing-song voice, only to confront a row of black teeth. Higher than his chest, he dropped down behind the jaw of a long-dead dragon. The bones felt warm, but then Jon realized the heat had come from the old black tom brushing against his arm. "What do you want, Varys?" "I am in a hurry." Varys chortled, a loud sibilant sound that covered the scrape of boots approaching. "Merely curious. Who helped you? How did you come to the city? How many have you killed in the Red Keep?" "I found the dead bodies, the Grand Maester and the Queen's kettle," Varys said. "There are all sorts of odd deaths in King's Landing." "How do you know I killed them?" "Then who did? Was it the Martells?" The eunuch asked eagerly. "Dead is dead. What does it matter? I am the Master of Whispers, Snow. My trade is secrets. Like your betrayal of Princess Axlia and her children. You could have taken them from King's Landing in the passages under the castle. Alas, the passages do not lead to Mekar's Holdfast. You lie. I saw you take the tunnel from the cemetery to the Holdfast. Why didn't you save them? You made an oath to the king and the royal family. I serve the realm. Someone must. Not the king or queen, but the people. I want a land of peace and plenty, a place where the powerful do not prey on the powerless." The eunuch said. "Pretty words. What have you done to make them come true?" Jon said. The black tom padded stealthily about the dragon skulls, stalking the eunuch. "More than you can imagine. My plots grow and grow, from the Red Keep to the far side of the world. One day I will serve a ruler who lives only for the people." "I doubt that," Balerion hissed and spat, and Jon dove toward the black cat, and saw the eunuch's silk slippers and the bottom of the dark gray robes. The bolt slammed into the plump belly. The eunuch lurched backwards, and a marish crossbow clattered on the ground. Jon stood up and reloaded. The eunuch's blood dripped on the jaws of an immature dragon, perhaps Rikos or Tessarian. Both had died in the dance. Varys moaned as he clutched his stomach. "I could have helped you. I could have told you Lord Tywin's plans. I do not like people who kill or mutilate children." Jon shot again directly into the mouth, the bolt pinning the eunuch's head to the cellar's damp stone wall. Balerion hissed his approval. Arya Stark glared at the scarred, burnt face, remembering Micah, the butcher's boy killed on Joffrey's orders at the Ruby Ford. Sansa asked Brienne for an explanation, but the Lady Tarth only stammered unintelligibly. Jane Poole did not speak at all. Lord Snow did not mention any other passengers. The Stark girls, Brienne and Jane Poole, but no one else. Captain Manderley refused entrance, where the gangplank met the wolf wind. Surprisingly, the Hound made no move for his sword. I protected Sansa Stark in King's Landing, and I made sure this one got here safe. He pointed to Jane. That was Lady Brienne's task, not yours, Chet said. What does that bloody matter? I didn't tell the Lannisters. I could have, the Hound snarled. Besides, I need to leave King's Landing too. The Hound has forsworn his vows to the Kingsguard, Brienne added. How do we know he is not a spy? He might betray us once he gets on the ship, Arya said. He could swear an oath that he harms no one. We could let him off at River Run or the inn at the crossroads, Sansa volunteered. Clegane just broke his oath. Why won't he break another? Arya yelled. A guttural roar came from the Mudgate. Sailors and whores ran as a freakishly large man in plate armor and bucket helm charged up on the docks on a brown destrier, followed by a much smaller figure riding a pony. The Hound's black stallion trotted away in a futile attempt to block the wharf, only to be swept aside by a slap of a massive gauntlet. Fuck me, it is Gregor. The Hound pushed forward, stepping onto the boat, pull the gangplank up, and get everyone off the deck. We can't. It is tied down with ropes to the dock, the captain said in horror. Then step back. Give us space to fight. Give me a shield. We will need them, Sandor barked. Why? We just need to stop Sir Gregor from boarding the ship, Brienne said. Chet scrambled and handed Sandor a round wooden shield. It barely covered the Hound's chest, leaving the lower torso open to attack. The Hound crouched down, using the shield to protect the shoulder and head. The warhorse balked at the end of the dock, but the mountain ground his spurs hard, stung and bleeding in the flanks. The destrier galloped up the gangplank and jumped into the air. As the horse flew past, Sacre-Grart slashed down and Brienne barely blocked the blow. At the same instant, the Hound plunged his blade up into the belly. The horse collapsed, bloody entrails spilling onto the quarterdeck. The horse screamed, shuddered, and died. The mountain stood up, with the dead stallion guarding his flanks. The Hound rushed forward and the mountain struck a two-handed blow, shearing off a huge chunk of the round shield. Before the mountain could strike again, Brienne was at the Hound's side and staggered, while she parried another vicious swing. Do something, Arya shouted to Manderley. Do you have any long spears? We're sailors, Lady Arya, not knights. None of our blades could hope to penetrate plate armor. The Hound threw away the ruined shield. Brienne and the Hound were two of the larger fighters that Arya had ever seen. The mountain was an entire head taller, and that head was enclosed in steel with only an array slit for the visor. The Clegane brothers exchanged mighty blow after blow, with Brienne attempting a few thrusts before being knocked to the side by a fist. The Hound was strong, the mountain was stronger. His armor was far heavier, and Arya realized it was only a matter of time before there would be only one Clegane alive. Brienne, Sansa screamed. Pointing at a boy in mail creeping behind the Maid of Tarth, Brienne rolled to the ship's side and the sword only grazed her neck. The pimply squire lunged forward, eager to push his advantage. Silent and swift as a shadow, Arya stepped behind the boy. Using both hands and holding needle like a spear, she stabbed the boy's back, the thin blade slipping under the chain links. The squire's eyes got big and he dropped his sword. Arya jerked his knife from its sheath and carved a red smile above the mail coif, leaving the knife stuck in the throat. Chet, Clydas, Ayer pointed to the dead warhorse. Remove this from the deck, now. The Wintertown crew rushed to execute her order. Demaze whistled loudly, and from the cargo hold 24 white-faced children with dark eyes poured out, with knives, daggers, axes, and hatchets. They hacked, chopped, and hewed at the dead horse, rendering the animal into bits of hair, meat, and bone. In scant minutes, enough of the bloody bits were tossed over the side to create a path to the mountain. Brienne, Arya yelled. The Maid of Tarth nodded and pressed the mountain harder, raining savage blows down the left side. The combined efforts of Brienne and the Hound forced the mountain back, the great steel sword moving in a blur as it fended off both attackers. The Mountain took his right hand off the 6-foot blade and punched the helmetless Sandor in the head. The Hound fell hard to the ground, and the triumphant Gregor roared, turning his attention to beating down Brienne. Arya drew Graham, the rippled blade forged at Harrenhal for her name day present. She lunged forward, and the steel pierced the back of the right knee, cutting through mail and boiled leather between the plates, covering the thigh and the calf. The Mountain screamed, and Arya thrust her brother's gift into the left knee, severing the other hamstring. The crippled Mountain collapsed to the ground, but when Brienne stepped forward, the Mountain wrapped a huge arm around her leg, dragging the lady to the ground. The Mountain's right hand grabbed Brienne's throat. Arya ran forward and sliced at the gauntlet. The awkward stroke only glanced off the thick steel with a skid. The Mountain somehow got up on his knees and swung the huge sword at the hidden tormentor. If Arya were a few inches taller, the blade would have chopped her head in half. Instead, the sword cut deeply into the mast and gashed the heavy linen sails. The axe scrambled, desperately trying to avoid Clegane's grasp. Brienne pounded on the Mountain's breastplate with 2 armored fists, only to be swatted away like a gnat biting an elephant. He actually heard Sansa and Jane screaming, and then a quarrel whistled through the air, piercing the right pauldron, the bolts fletching sticking out from the shoulder. "Get away from my sister," Jon Snow said, the Black Tom hissing by his side. Jon ran forward and smashed the crossbow on the bucket helm. The broken pieces of wood covered the 2 eye slits. He dragged Arya to safety. Brienne took the groggy Hound by his arms and pulled him away. The Mountain shook off the blow from the crossbow and tried to stand. Even on his knees, he was almost as tall as Brienne. "I stabbed the Mountain in both knees, but he is still fighting," Arya said. Her brother picked up the Hound's long sword and faced Gregor, with Arya and Brienne flanking the crippled beast. Jon stayed at the edge of the Mountain's reach, only blocking and backstepping. He didn't bother to attack. "Chet, how much wildfire do we still have?" "Only 1 satchel left, my lord. 10 vials. You wanted to take it back north to study. Put them all in that large bucket." Jon continued to parry the Mountain's swings. The Hound had regained his feet when Chet was finished. Jon tossed the sword to Sandor, and the Hound warily took his place. "Lord Snow, are you certain that the ship will be safe?" Captain Manderley asked. "Safe enough." Jon shattered the vials with the pommel of a dagger. The murky green liquid shimmered in the bucket. He circled the deck until the Mountain, focused on the other threats, could not see him. Jon ran, jumped in the air, and slammed the bucket on Gregor Clegane's head. More clay and glass broke, and wildfire dripped down the Mountain's armor, from the crest of the helmet into the narrow eye slits, down the gaps of the gorget, and into the broken right pauldron. For once, the Mountain bellowed in abject fear like a bull led to the slaughter. Jon reached out his right arm, and a frightened boy handed him a lit torch before rapidly retreating. Everyone besides her brother fell back, Arya included. Jon thrust the torch into the holes of the great helm, and a plume of green flame exploded upward. In his agony, the Mountain shook off the fragments of the bucket, the worn wood now lighting up the harbor with a dark emerald green burning on the surface. Gregor reached out in desperation, but Jon stabbed the torch into the right pauldron, already broken by the bolt. The huge right arm joined the Mountain's head, wreathed in green flames. The searing heat did not bother her brother. The torch traced down the thick plate armor, the neck gorget, the top of the breastplate, the underarms, the gap between the gauntlets and the vambraces. An awful acrid stench filled the evening air, and Arya realized it was burnt flesh, burnt skin, burnt hair. The Mountain collapsed face down, writhing as the wildfire cooked the beast alive. Jon tossed the torch into the water. He took the Mountain's 6-foot word in both hands. He lifted the fiery blade high, and using all his weight, slammed the sword down, chopping off the right hand. Jon hacked off the left arm at the elbow, and the right foot before carefully measuring his next attempt. He severed the neck between the helm and the gorget. That took 2 blows. He dumped the flaming flesh off the boat, saving only the Mountain's head. Many eyes watched, some horrified, many afraid, and a few satisfied at the day's work. "Are we ready?" His voice carried over the water. The captains and their crews silently nodded. Jon checked that everyone was on board. The rescuers, the Wintertown boys, and Varys' little birds. The mayor, the palfrey, and Sandor's stallion were led up the gangplank. "Let's go home." There were not enough troops. Then again, 500 more guards would not have made a whit of difference. A thin line of gold cloaks and sellswords dawdled about the harbor in a futile effort to push back the throngs of spectators. That morning, clever merchants moved the market in Fishmonger Square to the docks outside the river gate. Silver stags and copper stars changed hands to the cries of fishmongers, tavern wenches, and street peddlers, selling food and drink to a spellbound audience listening to exaggerated tales of the wildfire wedding. Tyrion stifled a yawn. The destruction of the Tower of the Hand was not the reason for his lack of sleep. His Lord Father demanded that Jaime and Tyrion lead the watch and Lannister guards in airing the Red Keep thoroughly for traces of Snow and his confederates. They discovered the bodies of Pyxell and Kettleblack in the royal sept. They tried and failed to identify the hundreds of corpses in the ruins of White Sword Tower. But the real work was combing through the myriad secret passages under the castle. A dozen teams of men armed with torches, lamps, and long poles were sent into the labyrinthine tunnels. And that difficult task had barely begun before disturbing news reached the Red Keep. Somehow, the Mountain had followed Sansa Stark to the wharf, only to get embroiled in a vicious fight. But this time, his father's most feared beast met his match. Tales of the Mountain's last ride spread through every tavern in King's Landing. With nightfall, it was too dark to trawl the rush. That was why Tyrion had come to the docks that morning. "They found something," Bronn said, pointing to the river rats surfacing out of the water. One boy waved a giant blackened hand in a charred gauntlet. Two other urchins carried a metal-encased forearm severed at the elbow and raised their prize in the air to the lusty cheers of the crowd. Tyrion sighed. This would not improve his father's temperament. "The Mountain died unarmed," Bronn quipped as they walked closer. Tyrion was not the only one curious about the remains. A dark-haired man approached, flanked by an entourage of sand snakes and Dornish guards. He eyed the long and deadly spear resting in the man's hand carefully. "Tyrion Lannister, I am surprised you are not drowning your sorrows over your lost bride. And I am surprised you are awake so early, Prince Oberin. I thought you would celebrate House Lannister's misfortunes well into the night." "Celebrate? Why? House Lannister has not suffered enough misfortune. The Mountain is dead, but your father is alive. Your bastard nephew sits on the Iron Throne. Be careful what you say, Prince Oberin. King's Landing is full of spies, and it is dangerous to speak against the throne." The Red Viper laughed. "Less so than yesterday. Tell me, is it true? My guards hear that the spider was discovered last night in the tunnels, shot by a crossbow." "Not the tunnels, but the cellar with the dragon skulls. The tunnels crisscross multiple rooms below the castle. It is all rather confusing. Snow must have killed Lord Varys after escaping the throne room," Tyrion said. "That changes things. The spider whispered certain promises that he won't be able to keep. Oberyn was hiding something behind that saturnine face." Tyrion preferred his enemies rash and hot-headed, not thoughtful and composed. Vipers were more dangerous hiding in the grass. "What promises were these?" "You don't need to know. A dead man. A dead plan," Oberin said. As Hand of the King, Tyrion had little choice but to rely on Varys. No one, not even Lord Varys, knew more secrets about the Game of Thrones than the spider the eunuch had been whispering to the Martells. But about what had he placed Myrcella in danger? "Boy, Tyrion," Bronn walked over from a crowd of small folk. "I spoke to the dock workers. They saw Clegane at the harbor." "Of course they did," Tyrion said, pointing at the severed hand and arm. "Not Gregor. Sandor, Clegane, the Hound, and Brienne of Tarth escorted a girl to a riverboat. The Mountain galloped up and tried to kill them all. They were still fighting when Snow came and burnt the Mountain alive and chopped him to bits. Then the boat sailed west." "And the Hound?" "He left with the Starks on the boat," Bronn said. The Hound had joined their enemies. The Mountain was dead. And so were Varys, Pycelle, Ser Osman Kettleblack, and 3 other White Cloaks. And hundreds of guards and watchmen. A short, fat-bellied man with thin, balding hair strummed his fingers over a worn 12-string wood harp. "Lords and ladies, gentlefolk, let me spin a song about the rescue of a maiden from a horrible fate, saved from the The crowd brayed with amusement at the harper's words, and Tyrion realized that the Lannister name had become shit in King's Landing. Rays of light darted through makeshift cloth drapes, erected for privacy on the wolf wind. Sansa Stark opened her eyes to see a cloaked Jane Poole tremble as she gazed at the morning sun rising over the stern. But they were no longer prisoners in the Tower of the Hand with a window over the sprawling fetid city. Instead, Sansa smelled the fresh, clean air of the rush, heard the chirping of sparrows and shrikes, and felt the water flow under the boat and the stiff western wind blowing hard against the sails. "It wasn't a dream. It really happened," Sansa said. "Yes, my lady," her friend handed over a plain woolen cloak to cover the garish orange gown. Jane sat down on their shared bed and offered to braid Sansa's auburn locks. "No need, Arya's right. Better to be a free small folk than a captured highborn." "Are we free? We could not have gotten very far from King's Landing," Jane said. Sansa pulled down the curtains, bathing in the golden sunlight. Brienne and Sandor Clegane waited outside. The Maid of Tarth snapped to attention while the Hound snorted, rolled his eyes, and returned to sharpening his sword. "Lady Brienne, where are we?" "I do not know, my lady, but I know someone who does," Brienne said. They found the captain near the galley, where the smell of sardines, fried crisp in sizzling poppy oil with peppers, wafted through the air. A dozen hungry urchins waited in line as the Wintertown boys served hot fish on bread torn from loaves warmed over a fire. When they saw her, the chattering stopped. The urchins parted before them, and Chet piled a wooden trencher high with food. The smell of the sardines and oil made her stomach rumble. "Lady Sansa, I am glad to see you well after a day of rest," Matoran Manderly said. "Where are we, Seer? And do you think the Lannisters will pursue us?" Sansa asked. "We are half a day's sail from Tumbler's Falls, and I doubt they can. Queen Cersei has ordered a fleet of new warships built giant dramans with hundreds of oars each, far too large to travel on the river. Even on the open sea, they are poor vessels, slow and hard to maneuver." "What about the Gold Road? Couldn't we be attacked where the road crosses the Blackwater?" the Hound asked. The Manderly man spoke directly to Sansa. "Robb Stark ordered the bridge at the Blackwater destroyed many moons ago, and the crossing is in the Riverlands. With the victory at the God's Eye, no one will challenge the Starks there." Sansa broke her fast on sardines, so hot that she nearly burned her tongue and needed to drink black ale mixed with river water. The dripping oil, the crusty bread, the fried fish, it was no lavish feast with exotic spices, fresh fruits, sweetmeats, and arbor wine. The breakfast was simple food, leavened with the taste of freedom. No meal could be more satisfying. Robb Stark rode side by side with Lord Jason and his eldest son, Patrek, as the army approached Seaguard, only a short hop away from the headwaters of the Blue Fork. Seaguard was a walled town, set on a hill, overlooking Ironman's Bay and the Cape of Eagles. Encircled by 3 walls, the highest point was the Maester Castle, but Seaguard had a dozen towers of varying heights, including the one that held the immense bronze bell. 10 years ago, the booming bell rang for the first time in centuries, calling the townsfolk to shelter near the castle when the longships were sighted. The Greyjoy rebellion had faltered here when Jason Mallister slew Roderick Greyjoy, Balon's heir, under the walls and drove the Ironborn back into the sea. The Reavers from Pike had never forgotten their defeat. Small folk lined the walls about Seaguard, cheering and whistling the return of their fighting men and the coming of the Northern Army. Lord Jason held his blazon high in the air, a silver eagle on a purple field that matched the winged helms of the Eagle Knights. House Mallister had a proud and noble lineage, more glorious than their Tully overlords. "Lord Stark, shall we prepare you a feast?" Patrick Mallister asked eagerly. Robb shook his head. "No, battle plans come first. Feasts can wait after the fight." They rode past the great central square into the castle. The 3 dire wolves followed. The northern commanders gathered in the solar. Lord Jason ceded the honor of the ornate wooden throne, and Robb remembered that 500 years ago, the Mallisters had been one of the many river lords who had claimed to be king of the Trident. "Long ships have been sighted on the edge of the cape, perhaps 5 days away," Patrek said. "How many?" Robb asked. 60 ships of the Iron Fleet that can hold 100 fighters each, but probably less than that. I don't see how Euron Crow's Eye can field that many men," Patrick said. "Why not?" Robb asked. "The Crow's Eye ship is the Silence. The ship is crewed entirely by mutes whose tongues he ripped out," Lord Jason said. "Euron rips out the tongues of his men and they still serve him," Robb asked aghast. Why would anyone do that? He is a madman, the worst of the Greyjoys, and that's saying quite a bit. He attracts fools and mongrels from all over the known world. Monsters who lust for rape and pillage. The Silence has plundered ships from Ibn to Ashai. Wheelus Manderley said. Robb shook his head at the Ironborn. How many ships do we have? 2 war galleys to defend the harbor. We have 6 long ships, but they are small, less than half the size of the ships in the Iron Fleet, Jason said. 2 galleys and 6 small longboats. That is your entire fleet? The Great Jon asked in disbelief. Patrak Mollister flushed. We are merchants, not raiders. We don't sail long ships to sack towns. Our harbor is home to cogs and other trading vessels. But you have many cogs. I counted at least 24 large ships in the harbor. Can they be used for war? Robb asked. The Mollisters, Flints, and Manderleys had a hushed conference. My lord, there is a great difference between a cog and a galley. Galleys and longships use both oars and the sail. That means far more of the crew have to work at rowing. An ironborn longship is shallow and light, and double-ended, so it can swiftly reverse direction. A cog has only 1 sail and no oars, so it can hold far more cargo with a smaller crew, but without any wind it would be becalmed and fall prey to raiders. But without the need for rowers, a cog could carry far more fighting men, Robb mused. True, my lord. In a war galley, more than half the men tend to the oars. But every ironborn rows and fights. That's why the Reavers are so effective at raiding, Patrick said. If the Greyjoys get past Seaguard, their longships could attack up and down the Trident, like House Horde before the dragons burned them in Harrenhal, Lord Jason said. How skilled are the merchant captains? Can they handle their cogs against a longship? Robb asked. The men of Seaguard are good sailors, but no man can sail upwind. When the Ironborn stormed Seaguard, we met them at the town walls. The squids would be delighted to fight our small fleet in the bay, Patrak said. But cogs would not be easy to board on the open seas. Their sides are much taller, Robb said. A cog has a high freeboard. Sailors can fight off 1 longship. But if a merchant vessel is swarmed by 4 or 5 longboats, the crew would be slain and the ship taken as a prize. Wheelus Manderley said, Lord Stark, the Greyjoys expect us to give battle at the walls, not in the waters. The Ironborn will hug the shoreline before the attack. Our scouts have sighted them on the western tip of the Cape of Eagles. It would be madness to sail our galleys forth, Lord Jason said. Robb turned his eyes west toward the harbor. War is madness, my lords. There is only one way to fight and win. Never attack where and when the other man expects. Take me to the ships and captains. The squids pride themselves in ruling the waves. We will prove them wrong. The morning mists off the river had faded into wisps of gray. Here and there, boats fished for trout and river pike, occasionally hailing the 3 river boats. The Blackwater was mostly deserted. Few merchants dared to travel between the God's Eye and King's Landing, to the amusement of Sandor Clegane, and the astonishment of everyone else. Arya practiced the water dance on the Wolf Wind. Her sister stood sideways, keeping her balance, while she thrust, spun, and lunged with her 2 blades, one a smoky gray rapier and the other an even thinner dirk. The urchins gawked and gaped as Arya danced about the deck. That's not fighting, the Hound snorted. If you want to kill a man, you need armor and a big fucking sword, not dancing around like a ponce. I stabbed the mountain through his knees. Arya yelled back, only because Gregor was facing us, the Hound replied, and he would have killed you even on his knees had Snow not shot him with a crossbow. Where is your brother, Lady Arya? Brienne asked. Grozia glared at Sandor and then abruptly sheathed both blades in a blink of an eye. I will take you to him. They found Jon in the dark cargo hold, examining several of the little birds under the light of a candle held by Chet. He checked their faces and mouths, examined bony ribs, and had them walk back and forth. The children submitted quietly, without a murmur, and when each finished, they were each given several copper stars and a sweet cake soaked in honey. The Zari Jigsaws Dador, Jon said to a boy with a bruised cheek. The urchin gave a shy smile and munched on the cake. What language is that? Arya asked. Pentoshi, a bastard dialect of High Valyrian. I told him that he is not a slave, Jon answered. How are they? Arya asked, as Sansa and Jane sat down on hard wooden boxes while Sandor and Brienne stood. Better than I expected. Half a dozen on the Wolfwind with their tongues cut out, less that number on the other 2 ships. Perhaps the others died more quickly, Jon replied. Who would rip out the tongue out of a child? An outraged Brienne asked. Varys. He wanted spies that could not talk. Jon said. If I return to King's Landing, I will have words with him. How can the king and the Hand allow such horrors? Brienne said. Don't bother. The eunuch is dead, Jon said. Jon, I never thanked you for rescuing me, Sansa said. I didn't rescue you, Sansa. We rescued you, all of us. Arya and I needed the help of the others. Jane and Brienne provided a distraction, and the Wintertown boys were critical in the scheme. I did not expect the Hound, but no plan goes perfectly, Jon said. You tricked me into taking Lady Jane from the castle, Brienne said. Jon shrugged. It was the only way for you to escape. The secret tunnel in the Tower of the Hand is so narrow that a man has to crawl. Imagine if your plate armor got stuck in the dark. Still, you could have told me, she whinged. Why? How would that have helped? You should thank us for taking you away from King's Landing. What do you think the Lannisters would do to you? How long would it take for you to break from torture? Jon said to a stunned Brienne, Snow, I want to thank you for killing my brother. Sandor said grudgingly. We killed the Mountain, you, Brienne, and Arya. I only delivered the final blow, but I am glad that he died screaming. Actually, I expected the Martells to kill him. I wonder what went wrong. 7 hells. The Martells were involved, the Hound said. Jon nodded. The Red Viper hates the Lannisters, and he has wanted revenge for 16 years. But enough about that. What about you, Clegane? What do you want? I wanted my brother dead for many years, but now, I don't know. I can't go back to King's Landing, and I have thrown away my white cloak. Might be. I could serve your brother. I am a better killer than most. How much gold will you pay? The Hound said. We have plenty of gold, but do you really care? Did you serve the Lannisters for gold? My grandfather was kennel master to Titus, Tywin's father. He saved him from a lioness at a cost of a leg and 3 dogs. My father was Titus' squire and became a knight. We served the Lannisters because of lands and a title. There is a lot of land in the north. But how do we know you will be loyal? Jon asked. Sandor Clegane has broken his vows to the Iron Throne. He is no knight, Brienne said. Gregor Clegane was a knight. So was Amory Lork. Knights are not better than other men. The Hound is not the only man who soiled the white cloak. Gold I can give you, land I can grant you, and a title if you wish. But House Stark needs loyal men and women, Jon said. But Jon, the Hound murdered Micah. Jory said Sandor Clegane ran him down and cut him in half with a sword. He wasn't even armed, Arya said. Who the hell is Micah? The Hound answered his own question. Oh, the butcher's boy who tossed Joff's pretty sword in the river. They told me he attacked the prince. It was Joffrey's sworn shield. I was ordered by the queen to bring him back. I attacked Joffrey, he swung his sword at me, and Nymeria bit him. I should have let my dire wolf kill him then, Arya said. Jon held his angry sister back. We have all done terrible things, Arya. What matters is what we do now. I am a killer, Snow. I've killed my first man at 12. I have lost count of how many I killed since, but you have killed more. You had my brother's men slaughtered, and his pet rats deserved killing. You killed thousands more at the Red Fork and at the God's Eye. Death in battle is different. That is a fair fight, not killing an unarmed boy, Brienne said. You are still dead. There were 100 Micahs at the God's Eye. There will be no songs about their deaths. I have killed loads of people, lords, knights, merchants. Even children and women, but less than Snow, Sandor said. We need swords, and we need killers. The war is not over. Tyrion Lannister. The Greyjoys. House Stark has enemies. Clegane, will you fight for the North? Jon said. I will. Just point to who you want me to kill. The Hound chuckled. No killing for now. Just guard my sisters. And there is something else. Something important. His eyes swept over the small crowd. I want to know exactly what happened in King's Landing. Every detail. Every word. What's there to say, Snow? You shat on Tywin Lannister's head and sailed off. The Hound said. Fighting a war is more than swinging a sword. We need to know our enemy and their plots, what they have done, and why they did it. Joffrey, Tywin, Tyrion, Cersei, the small council. Jon Snow spoke first. I will tell you what happened after they arrested Lord Stark. They killed my father and gave me to... Her face reddened and she broke down, sobbing. Jane greatly suffered at Lord Bates's hands. Must she relive those moments? Sansa said. Yes. But she can speak to me alone, as will all of you, including the Hound. The more we know, the better we can prepare. Modesty will get us killed. There is no shame in suffering. It is only regrettable if we don't fight back, Jon said. The crying girl nodded silently. 200 Lannister guards in red cloaks, led by Captain Vylar, patrolled the great hall of the Red Keep. Such a gesture might be symbolic, but came a day late and many dragons short. The horse had already left the barn after shitting all over the floor, the walls, and even the roof. Pyromancers surrounded the Iron Throne, and almost 24 hours later, spectral green sparks still smoldered on the spikes and edges. The Iron Throne no longer resembled a chair. The crest of swords had melted down, dripping gray slag on the steep steps. The spikes and barbs fused together into oddly shaped clumps. The twisted blades did not fan out like talons of some great metal beast, but rather formed a confused lump of tangled and tortured steel. After 300 years, the once fearsome symbol of Aegon's conquest was ruined. Only Dragonflame, the fires beneath the earth, and the sun in the summer sky are hotter than wildfire. The pompous Hallyne lectured a passel of apprentices. What an ass, Tyrion thought. No one had seen a dragon in 150 years, and if they had, they would never measure the temperature of their breath to wildfire. No, unless you were a Targaryen. The only sensible reaction to dragon fire was to run away screaming. Only dragons did not fear dragons. Lord Totslewin held court over a much diminished small council. Maester Stattle sat in an oaken chair shaped like a giant green hand, complete with a fleshy thumb and protruding nail. The Rose Lord insisted the ridiculous seat was a tribute to the mythical Garth Greenhand and the long-extinct House Gardener. No one was fooled by the absurd claim. We found a few more caches under the Sept of Baelor and many of the city gates, Jaime said. Why did you not tell anyone that Aegirus plotted to burn down King's Landing? Had you done so, you would be a hero. And Snow would not have found the wildfire, Tywin said. The Knights of the King's Guard are sworn to keep the King's secret, and do you think Ned Stark would have believed me? Jaime replied. Of course he would. Oberin Martell said. His father and brother were burnt alive by wildfire. I hunted down the pyromancers involved, Rosier, Garrigus, and Valis. After they died, no one knew where the caches were, Jaime said. I doubt that, the Dornishman said. There were several hundred jars in the tunnels below the Great Sept. Do you think 3 men moved them all? The Alchemist Guild must have known, Jaime responded, only with a mullish silence. What of the whores, Baelish? Did you question them? Tywin said. I did, my lord. None of them saw Jon Snow. He never frequented a brothel. Either the bastard is a sorcerer or he has spies in King's Landing, Baelish said. We need to punish Snow for his antics. He threatened my Margaery. Highgarden will not allow such villainy to go without a reply. The honor of House Tyrell demands satisfaction. Mates Tyrell was as dull and ponderous as his chair. Why should we do anything? Tyrion said. But the insult, Mates sputtered. He endangered the future queen of the 7 kingdoms. If he wanted Margaery Tyrell dead, she would be. Snow has left King's Landing. Sansa Stark will never want to see this city again. We have reports that Robb Stark is leading an army up the Trident to fight the Greyjoys. Let the Northmen go north, Tyrion said. Why, Lord Tyrion, I thought you would be more eager to recover your bride. Baelish smiled. Do you wish to take Lady Sansa back? Then go, Lord Baelish. Ride for Harrenhal, or Riverrun, or Winterfell. Perhaps the Starks will welcome you like they did the Mountain. Sir Gregor was burnt alive and cut into many pieces. Do you think the wolves have discovered your betrayal of Ned Stark? Go north, and you will find out, Tyrion said. Lady Sansa does not know. So how would the Starks find out? Baelish said. Sandor Clegane knows. He joined the Starks and sailed away from the city after fighting Sir Gregor on the ship, Tyrion said, wiping the stupid smirk from Littlefinger's face. The Starks remain a threat to the Iron Throne, Tywin said. No, they do not, Tyrion said, his response eliciting an angry glare from his father. Out, everyone! This meeting is over. Tywin Lannister was used to having his orders followed, even by the great lords. Not you, Jaime. The old lion waited until Mace Tyrell, Petyr Baelish, and Oberin Martell left the cavernous great hall, and only the 3 Lannisters remained. Have you turned craven? Tywin barked. No, I see no benefit in continuing to fight the North. The Lannisters have met Robb Stark and Jon Snow in battle many times. We have not fared well. Why continue? Tyrion said. The Starks are a threat to Joffrey, Tywin said. Joffrey is a threat to Joffrey, Tyrion retorted. The Starks do not want the Iron Throne. Ned Stark arrived at King's Landing before the other rebels. He could have taken the throne, and Jon Arryn and Robert Baratheon would have agreed. Ned Stark chose to return north. Robb Stark is like his father. He values honor and wants only to be Lord of Winterfell. The Northern Army was 3 days away, and yet they did not march on the capital. What does that tell you, father? The young wolf does not want to be king. He does not want to bend his knee to Joffrey either, Jaime said. Who does? Joffrey is a vicious idiot. We should make peace with the Starks, Tyrion said. How do you propose to do that? We have no hostages, Jaime said. Robb Stark wanted his father returned as Warden of the North and his sister Sansa freed. We cannot do the first, but he has the second. Give him back ice. It was his father's sword and has belonged to their house for centuries. The Starks may despise Joffrey, but we will be safer when they are back home. Like Sunspear, Winterfell is far away, Tyrion said. No, I will not be called a toothless lion. Jon Snow defied us in front of the entire royal court. We are Lannisters. I won't let our house be shamed. Tywin raged. Tyrion shrugged. They laugh at me. All the time, father. They call me imp, halfman, and demon monkey. You told us many times that a lion does not care about the opinions of sheep, that the wolves return north. We would still hold the Iron Throne. They do not laugh at me. They will not laugh at me. Tywin slammed the table hard. I will pay the Starks back for this. How, father? Tyrion is right. No one wants to face Robb Stark and Jon Snow in battle, and that was before the wildfire. Most of our knights are dead, and many of our lords are captured. The Northmen may be savages, but they can certainly fight, Jaime said. There are other ways to skin a wolf, Tywin said ominously. Tyrion sighed. His father never listened. There were ways to skin lions, too. They left their scowling sire with a pile of parchment and a trio of fawning maesters. Tyrion led Jaime to the solar of the kitchen keep, overlooking the pig yards. Last night, Bronn and his sellswords commandeered the servant quarters, leaving the dwarf with a spacious suite with a large bedchamber, dressing room, solar, and privy. Even the pigs did not smell that badly, given the constant scents of the kitchen. Wine, Podrick. Tyrion reclined on a velvet divan, resting aching feet on a wooden stool. Jaime paced back and forth, spoiling the view of the bay, and a brace of ducks roasted over coals with quails drowned in butter, chestnut soup, hot bread, and cheese. He clapped happily at the full goblets of arbor gold and quaffed deeply, smacking his lips at the taste of oak and fruit. Tyrion, it is the custom to celebrate at the wedding, not when your bride flees, Jaime said. But I am happy, brother. 2 days ago, I worried about the Starks cutting my cock off if they found me with Sansa Stark. Last night, I feared being burnt alive by wildfire. And today, I am free to drink wine and visit whores. Tyrion raised stubby arms in mock triumph. Tyrion, our Lord Father is livid. You know why he hated the Rhaenys Tarbex. He despises anyone who mocks House Lannister. Yes, I am all too familiar with the reigns of Castamere. Well, I have given him good advice. He may be too proud to take it, but I have no desire to twist the lion's tail. I don't see how we can make peace. The North will never forgive the death of Ned Stark. The wolves hate the lions, and Father knows that. Our father believes that everything that happens in the Seven Kingdoms revolves around him. He is wrong. Think about what Snow did and said at the wedding. What do you mean? Jaime, if Snow truly hated House Lannister, last night would have been quite different. I stood at the altar when he revealed himself. I am a Lannister, even if I am short and unloved. Snow could have killed me easily. He also captured Margaery Tyrell. Her marriage to Joffrey is what keeps us on the Iron Throne. If Snow hated our house, he would have killed her. Think of how weak our position would be without an alliance with Highgarden. Podrick served the creamy chestnut soup from a large tureen into two smaller bowls. Tyrion dipped the crusty bread into the thick bisque sprinkled on top with smoked duck breast, goat cheese, chopped herbs, and crisp croutons. He ate eagerly while his brother only nibbled. Snow's anger is directed at the crown. In the sept, he talked about justice for Ned Stark, Princess Yakia, Aegon, and Rhaenys. 3 of those are Mardells. He saved wildfire for the Iron Throne when he could have burned down the royal sept. And another thing, Gregor Clegane's death was no accident. Sir Jaxling tells me that Gregor killed a gold cloak when he demanded a maester. The mountain was hurt before he left the castle. How, Jaime asked. Oberyn Martell was seen with a spear leaving the Tower of the Hand. How he got a long spear so soon after the septa is the better question. Snow is in league with the Martells, Jaime realized. Perhaps, but there is no proof. We have no idea whether the Starks have other spies or allies in the capital. We have no idea why Varys was killed, or how Snow managed to kill Pycelle or Osmond Kettleblack in the Sept. And there is no chance of claiming Winterfell without Sansa. There is no good reason to continue this war. There are many bad ones. Pride, anger, refusing to admit our losses. A truce, however temporary, would serve House Lannister better. Jaime shook his head. Father will never agree to that. He wants a dynasty that will last 1,000 years, so that the Lannister name will live forever. Tyrion wiped the soup from his mouth. Jaime, that is a bunch of codswallop. Joffrey's dynasty may end in less than a decade. And even if it lasts, the name will be Baratheon, not Lannister. House Lannister has ruled Casterly Rock for 4,000 years. That will continue no matter who is on the Iron Throne. Father's actions are not for our house. Everything he does for his own glory. He hates the Starks because they have made him look foolish. He won't stop, Tyrion. Father will fight to the bitter end, Jaime said. So will the Starks? Arya stayed out of sight until the Wolfwind had departed. Tumbler's Falls. There, the 3 boats replenished their provisions, taking in barrels of salt cod, salt beef, salt pork, flour, peas, biscuits, and beer. The Wintertown boys bought fresh fruits and vegetables from merchants. Apples, beans, cabbage, onions, turnips, and beets. A great iron vat was heated in the galley and bubbled over with coarse oats and water, thickened into a glutinous porridge. The burgoo was ladled into wooden bowls, and then the cook added a pat of butter, blackstrap molasses, and a dollop of the greasy fat skimmed from the salt meat. Burgoo would never be served at a royal feast, but the oatmeal and hardtack biscuits made a hearty midday meal. Jon stood at the ship's bow after he finished speaking with Sandor Clegane. The Hound had exchanged his white cloak for thick brown robes, hiding his gray plate armor. He might have looked like a farmer, but for the Mountain's 6-foot sword strapped on his back. What did you find out? Ozzy asked. A hesitant Sansa joined her as well, and the Stark sisters waited for their brother to compose his thoughts. We should have killed Baelish. Baelish, not Tywin Lannister, Arya asked. Peter Baelish had Jane raped again and again in his brothels. Sansa said, that is not the only reason we should kill him. Baelish planned to sell Jane as Arya Stark. He asked her questions about Winterfell, Maester Luwin, who is the master of arms, the captain of the guards, the master of horse, the blacksmith, Jon said. But they are all loyal to House Stark. Sansa said, Baelish would have had them all killed. And our brothers would be dead as well, Robb, Jon, Bran, even little Rickon. So no one could question that Jane was a Stark. Arya realized. It goes deeper than that. If Baelish planned to sell her as a Stark, who would he sell her to? Most likely one of our bannermen. But our sworn houses, the Karstarks, the Umbers, the Manderleys, the Glovers, and the Mormonts, have pledged their oaths to Father many times, Sansa said. Traitors always claim to be loyal. What if the Iron Throne promised Winterfell as a reward for betrayal? If the North fought the Westerlands in a pitched battle, Robb would win. But if the Lannisters could bribe and corrupt our bannermen, then the outcome would be very different. When we executed Lord Bolton, he said others would break faith with House Stark. You can hardly trust Roose Bolton's words, Arya said. No, but we would be fools to ignore them. Before I killed Varys, he claimed that he could tell me of Tywin's plans. Is Baelish working with Tywin, or did Baelish have plans against the Starks that he did not share with the Lannisters? Lord Tywin might be plotting with others against us. Baelish always had kind words for me, Sansa said. So did Joffrey until he chopped off Ned Stark's head. So did the Queen when she asked you to write a letter to Robb declaring father a traitor, Jon said. Sansa Stark burst into tears. I didn't know, Jon, I didn't know. Jon cut off her apology. Now you do. Beach is a liar. His lie to Catelyn Stark about Tyrion Lannister began the war. The Hound saw his betrayal of Ned Stark in the throne room. Actions prove who someone is. Words just show what they pretend to be. What are we going to do? Arya said. We have no ravens and Robb is on the move. But we know now why father died. He trusted too easily and valued honor too much. That cost him his head. Mercy and honor are wasted on men like Tywin Lannister and Petyr Baelish. I wish I slit Littlefinger's throat in the sept, Arya said to her sister Shock. He deserves a worse death than that, Jon replied. He deserves to die screaming. The docks at Seaguard reminded Robb of White Harbor, clean and well-ordered with cobbled streets. The houses were smaller and made of wood, not stone, and there was no great ring fort, buzzing with scorpions and spitfires to defend the harbor. The smells and sounds of brewhouses and fish market greeted them on their walk to the ships. They passed by the war galleys and longships, making directly for the cogs. Lord Mallister had sent runners ahead, and the anxious captains waited by their merchant boats. Unlike warships named after great nobles or to strike fear in enemies, the cogs had unassuming, modest titles like the Merry Midwife, the Horn of Plenty, and the Sea Strider. At least 24 fat-bellied ships rested at the wharves, sturdy seagoing traders as long as any iron-borne longship and wider at the beam. The high sides would make them difficult to board in naval battle. 2 Stark guards plunked down a heavy chest full of gold and silver, only a small fraction of ransom from the God's Eye. The captains, from ports ranging from Old Town to faraway Volantis, stared at the shining coins with great curiosity. I want to hire your ships and crew for the fight against Euron Greyjoy and the Ironborn, Robb announced. A short, hairy man with bushy whiskers and beard dyed green snorted. My thanks, Lord Stark, for paying us instead of merely taking our ships. But the Crow's Eye will not fear cogs. My lord, they say you are unbeaten in the field, but this is the sea. Casso Mogat may be too blunt. But when have wolves ever done well in water? A Pantoshi man said. There are wolves that swim the coasts of Bear Island. They hunt seals, whale carcasses, and salmon. Daisy Mormont said. But not kraken, my lady, a big captain said. The Greyjoys are rather proud. They will not expect any challenge from fat-bellied cogs. And that's where they will be wrong. Jerry, Robb said. The tall blond boy came forward and put down a sheet of parchment. Sketched on the bow of a cog was a tall, multi-deck platform. This is a forecastle, my lords. Archers can hide here and rain down arrows on the longships below. The Half-Ibini's captain stared. It might work, but it would unbalance the ship. It would be too heavy in the bow and lean forward. Right. But that is why we will build an aft castle. Behind the mast and above the transom, we can erect an even larger platform. Because we have more space, it will be wide and broad, and a final wall against the Ironborn ship. Even after they have boarded the deck, our men would still be higher and attack from above, Jerry said. But the taller you build, the harder it is to sail. The more weight on the front and back, the easier it might be to capsize in a storm. And as Usse captain said, that is true, sir. But there is one last piece of the puzzle. Maester Snow drew this. With reverence, Jerry took out a sheet of worn vellum. Sketched on the main mast of a sailing ship was a basket-like top, tall enough to reach a man's chest. It was a lofty perch, a wooden barrel covered in canvas between the tops of the lower mast and the shrouds of the topmast. What is that thing? The big, broad captain asked. A crow's nest! A fighting top for the cog where the best archers can be placed. In the center, it will help balance the weight of the forecastle and the aft castle, Jerry said. Aye, a crow's nest, to shoot out the crow's eye. The Ironborn carry shields on the sides of their ships. That won't matter against our archers firing from high up. When they board, we will throw them back into the sea, Rhodes said. Lord Stark, these designs are quite novel, but the longships are already faster than cogs. We will be slower still with this extra weight. The short, green, bearded man said, You won't need to sail. I plan to take a galley out at night and in the morning race back to the shore The Ironborn will be eager to claim the ship as a prize. The cogs will be lashed together and anchored near the harbor. The men on the cogs will hide until they come close, and then, when they board, we will shower them with missiles. Arrows, bolts, javelins, and I will give men spears to kill the squids as they climb the freeboard and decks. Robb said, "We will need help from your sailors so we can build castles and crow's nests on the ships in a few days," Jerry said. "Everyone will help. The North expects every man will do his duty," Robb said. "They would need everyone. Carpenters, boatswains, and quartermasters on the ships. Smiths and apprentices and fletchers on shore. Trees of ash and cedar would be chopped down, and forges would produce arrow and spear heads. Even the women and children were enlisted in gathering goose feathers, splitting logs into dowels, preparing thread and linen, and making knocks out of horn and bone. The Ironborn preyed on the weak and helpless. They would find a very different welcome at Seaguard." The wind died down as they sailed up the river to the God's Eye. Arya had traveled along the blue-green ribbon of water when she fled with the recruits of the Night's Watch from King's Landing. Then, Euron had hoped to take refuge at Harrenhal, not knowing that Lady Shallowin had already yielded the castle to the Lannisters. Euron died at some empty holdfast, killed by Lorch and his men after he ordered Arya and Gendry to escape. Life had returned to the town on the southern shore of the lake. Boats bobbed on the long pier, and docks and lamps shone at the large sept near the Lord's Tower House. Rhaenyra was not certain, but she thought she saw an earth and timber hall to their right. "Lord Snow, the ship is becalmed. There is an inn nearby, and even holdfasts whose knights would be pleased to host us," the captain said. Jon shook his head. "No, we must hurry to Robb's side. He will be pleased to see Sansa and Arya again." The Manderley man nodded and walked back to the mast. Rosier sat down. The old Black Tom sniffed at her, and then returned to feeding on the mackerel in her brother's hand. "Thank you, Jon." She had no desire to relive the merries of her flight. "I want to see Robb, too. Father always said, the lone wolf died, but the pack survives." She nuzzled into her brother. "Do you believe that? We are stronger together than apart, but words are only words. A pack of wolves can be killed." "Father said the Starks have endured for thousands of years," Arya said. "The past is not the future, and nothing is certain in life." A bittersweet smile broke on Jon's face. "Well, that is not entirely true. Winter is coming." Her brother's eyes stared down into the cold steel waters of the God's Eye. "Do you think we will be safe once we return north?" Jon shook his head again. "There is no safety in this world. There are only moments of less danger. We have killed a few monsters, but there are others lurking around. King's Landing breeds villains, like flies on shit. Do you regret it, Jon? Not burning down the scepter, the throne room. We might have been able to kill both Joffrey and Tywin. We might also have killed the Tyrells and the Martells. That would be hard to explain to Owen and Alleras. Should we have killed everyone, it would be a great stain on our honor. It would have won the war. It might save the lives of our men and protect our brothers and sister," Ara said. Jon sighed. "I do not know. I thought of staying in King's Landing to kill Tywin with wildfire. I would likely have been captured or killed, but what is the value of a single life? You and Sansa would be safe, Robb would be king of the North, and the Iron Throne would have no hold on the Starks. A few lives lost, thousands more spared." Arya smacked him hard in the arm. "Don't be stupid. You won't die. And you won't give up. Sacrificing yourself sounds like one of Sansa's stories about two fatheads in love. You know what they say about you and Robb? Dire wolves cannot be beaten in battle." Jon smiled and tousled her hair fondly. "Anyone can lose, but we will continue to fight." From the sea captains, Robb had learned more than he ever expected about winds, waves, boats, and sails. The waters of the Bight and the Narrow Sea were rough only in autumn, but Iron Man's Bay was never calm. Strong winds could drive waves 20 feet high, a danger to both cogs and longships. The last 5 days had seen cold and dreary weather with sharp winds blowing northwest, forcing the squids to take shelter in coves along the Cape of Eagles. The Ironborn were excellent sailors, but not eager to fight ship to ship. The Pentochic trader had explained the tactics quite well. The men of the Iron Isles preferred to board and fight, so they could ransom the crew and take the ship as a prize. Long ships were too narrow to carry back plunder and thralls. Unlike the dramans and war galleys of the royal fleet, the Iron Fleet carried no rams. In the cold and choppy waters of the northern seas, ramming an enemy vessel would have resulted in sinking both attacker and defender. Black sails bearing the Golden Kraken had been spotted 50 miles away on the coast. The Northern Army was ready for battle. Hundreds and hundreds of barrels bristling with arrows had been loaded onto the cogs. Forecastles, aft castles, and crow's nests had been erected on the cogs. All that remained was the final orders for battle. The galley will sail soon. All soldiers will board the ships tonight so that you will be ready for battle tomorrow. Robb said to the captains and commanders. The Maesters would accompany Robb on the Silver Eagle, the larger of their war galleys. Lord Stark, should we wear our full armor on board? Sir Michael Redford asked. The Vale Knights were entirely uncomfortable with fighting on water. For tomorrow, we have 3 types of forces. The greatest number will be archers, hidden in the castles and other platforms. The second will be the foot, and yes, you will wear plate and mail and shields and drive any who board the ships. The third will be the Marines. They will be lightly armored and carry javelins, spears, and knives. The knights and men-at-arms will form a wall to stop any charges or arrows, and the Marines can flank and harass the enemy. We will send them back to their fucking drowned god, the Great Jan said. Only if we surprise them. The Ironborn ships are quicker than ours. Plus, in the morning there will be a sea breeze blowing toward shore. The long ships will be upwind from our cogs. We want their entire fleet to engage our ships. We will not reveal our numbers until they come close and cannot retreat. Our archers should fire at the last moment, Robb said. We will have other men in the harbor, my lord. If they should swim for shore, they will not escape our axes and swords. Jason Mallister said, Lord Stark, I fear you underestimate the crow's eye, Casso Mogat said. Robb quieted the northern commanders with a glance. What do you mean, Captain? I would welcome your thoughts. It is a good plan, and the Ironborn have not seen ships or tactics like these. But Euron Greyjoy is feared for a reason. He is pillaged, raped, and murdered all over the world. The Crow's Eye is a dangerous man, hard to predict, and even harder to kill. He consorts with warlocks and sorcerers. The deck of the Silence is soaked red with blood. The short Ebenezer said, More likely to be paint, Euron Crow's Eye has not raped Seaguard, and so long as I am here, he will not do so. Robb answered. The Silver Eagle sailed out from Seaguard into a clear night, propelled by a steady land breeze. The dire wolves stared at the stars and a full moon before lying down for a well-deserved rest. All 3 had grown larger than a pony, but were still 1 or 2 hands shy of a full-grown destrier. Robb rubbed his dire wolf smoke gray fur behind the ears, but Grey Wind merely opened his eyes briefly and then went back to his bondmates. Ghost and Nymeria had already fallen asleep, huddled together for warmth and comfort. Robb chuckled. He had told his men to do the same, to rest up before the battle. Watchers had been posted at the bow, the stern, and the crow's nest, and the Maesters assured him the long ships had anchored at least half a day away. The land breeze blew west at night, and the Greyjoys were unlikely to row against the wind in darkness. Robb closed his eyes. He woke up to a sharp rap on the door. A young Maester page bore the captain's message. Sails had been sighted at last on the horizon. With the help of Olivar, he quickly dressed and went out into the cool morning air. His guard had already assembled. Mitchell Redfort, Daisy Mormont, Robb R. Royce, Small John, Umber, and other Valemen and northern lords. Jerry and the other Wintertown boys readied the 2 catapults on the deck. You can't see the sails from the deck, but Weil took a spyglass to the crow's nest. He says he saw the squids, Hollis Mullen chattered. The young guard in question had already climbed down the rope ladder. Lord Stark, I saw black sails on many ships, with lines of gold. Those would be the Greyjoy ships. Their sigil was a golden kraken on a black field. Although in truth, it appeared to Robb a yellow blob with squiggles. Can we tell which ship is the Silence? The hull of the Silence is red, not black or brown like the other ships, but we are too far away to see. The Maester captain said. And are the long ships moving? No, my lord. This early in the morning, the winds have died down. The Ironborn will wait to sail until the breeze begins to blow from the sea, the captain said. Get us closer, and then get ready to run for the shore, Robb ordered. The Maester men were skilled sailors and navigators. The The galley looped about in a semicircle, hiding in the morning fog until it slipped close to the Ironborn ships, but with the prows facing east. The Silver Eagle had only used the sails, choosing to preserve any rowing for battle. Men readied their weapons but had yet to don armor or string bows. The Silence was an ugly, ominous ship. The hull and deck were blood red and the sails darker than the other Greyjoy ships. The Kraken sigil was leaner and somehow hungrier, like the tentacles ravenous for prey. A motley crew of rogues manned the decks, some hairy and squat, others dark as pitch. On the prow, a maiden of black iron hung with outstretched thin arms, an unblinking mother of pearl eyes. The crow's eye had sewn her mouth shut. The Silence was completely quiet. Robb wondered why anyone would rip out the tongues of men to command a mute crew. How did Euron sail on the seas with no voice but his own? The crow's eye was an adman and the iron-born fools to follow him. The catapults launched the stones through the air. The first splashed short, but the second smashed into the figurehead, jarring loose the eyes. A third stone crashed into the white-painted hair, and the head fell to the side. A merciful death, Robb thought. An angry, black-haired man with a dark beard and a patch over his left eye appeared on deck. The right eye was blue as a robin's egg, deeper than the pale blue lips. The crow's eyes screamed orders. The Maester galley sailed past, the eagle on purple sigil taunting the squids. The chase was on. The pursuit took hours. The Silver Eagle ran downwind, heading straight for the shore, powered by a strong wind. The Iron Fleet followed, like a pack of dogs that had scented a fox. But I am no fox, Robb thought. The galley easily matched the longships, cutting through the waves. The crow's eye may use oars soon, Jason Mallister said as they sighted the walls of Seaguard. For now, the ships used only sails. No captain wanted to exhaust his crew too early. Why are his lips blue? Robb asked. He drinks the shade of the evening which makes him half mad. They say Euron cavorts with warlocks and has visions of vile abominations, half man, half fish, that rule the deepest and darkest corners of the ocean. Half mad, far more than half. Prepare for battle. Robb and his guard donned their armor, and archers strung their bows. The dire wolves stayed hidden and silent. They sailed past fat-bellied merchant ships, seemingly exposed vessels bobbing on the outer edges of the harbor, but the cogs were lashed together from stern to prow, and formed two lines, so that missiles could be shot from the sides without fear of hitting each other. As the Silver Eagle passed, archers, infantry, and marines began to emerge on the new platforms. The smaller Mallister galley, the Defiance, met them in the harbor with two other cogs, the Myrnaham and the Merry Midwife. The Silver Eagle turned so the port side faced the oncoming longships. The Ironborn, eager for plunder and blood, surged forward, swarming like crazed bees, raining volleys of spears and arrows as they prepared to board and take their prizes. The Seaguard ships held their fire and waited. The Silence stayed back, content to allow a dozen ships rush past toward the galleys. A long ship with a gray unmarked sail was in the lead, and its captain, a tall man with white hair and a hideous scar across lips and jaw, swore at his crew to row harder. The Silver Eagle waited until the boat was nearly upon them, and the two catapults fired, heavy stones smashing into the high-arched prow of the longship. Then the Northmen fired from all three sides. Arrows whistled into the air from the two lines, even as the Silver Eagle, the Defiance, the Merry Midwife, and the Myrnaham sent a deadly barrage directly into the advancing ships. Without shields, scores of oarsmen sprouted arrows, and the decks of the longships began to bleed red. The foam drinker slowed, but men on the Greyjoy ship tossed grappling hooks with sturdy hooks, while others hurled spears to offer cover. The Ironborn attempted to climb over, but Robb's guard formed a wall on the foredeck, spears in both hands, the points aimed out over the edge of the Silver Eagle's sides. The forest of spears and plate armor protected them from arrows. The Ironborn captain climbed onto the prow, trying to jump over the rail onto the deck. Even the high end of the prow barely reached the elevated deck of the forecastle. The white-haired man, fenced in by Mackle Redfort and Roland Wenwood's spears, made an awkward leap, only to be greeted by Grey Wind. The direwolf ripped his right arm off at the shoulder before savaging the already scarred face. Ghost and Nymeria defended the stern of the boat, allowing the lightly armored marines to gut man with javelins as they crossed, and above them all a storm of arrows rained from above, piercing the eyes, neck, and heads of the Ironborn. More and more longships joined the battle, but all over the harbor the same scene played out. The advantage of height in hand-to-hand battle was considerable. For missile fire, the North had the edge in height, cover, and thousands of arrows. Again and again, the Reavers clashed against heavily armored fighters only to be shot in the face or back or stabbed in the legs and sides by the Marines. Slowly and surely, Robb's forces were winning, and the harbor began to fill with the bodies of the Ironborn, hurled or pushed back over the sides. "Lord Stark!" Sir Michael Redfort cried in alarm. After his spear had been caught in a dead man's belly, the Vale Knight shifted to sword and shield, fighting like a legendary falcon knight. On the deck of the Silence, a monstrous man with a shaved head and dusky skin hefted a shiny dark and twisted war horn with both hands. The man wore many tattoos, the most prominent a black bird of prey, talons dripping blood on his naked chest. The horn was enormous, as tall as a man, banded with red gold and Valyrian steel and glowing with red glyphs. The cheeks of the tattooed man puffed and he blew. Rosily, the horn screamed, a wail of tortured pain and primal fury. The shriek went on, and Robb could hear nothing else. He wanted desperately to slam his hands to his ears, but he forced himself to keep his shield and sword. All about him, men cowered. Both the Northmen and the Ironborn were stunned by the horrible sound. Lodrax, Euron's mongrel blew the horn again, and the howl pounded into the Silver Eagle like a winter squall. The mast shivered and the sails heaved and bulged like a bloated belly. The deck of the forecastle quivered, and the crow's nest shook, pitching archers into the rope netting below. "Reef the sail!" the Manderley captain screamed as the galley began to list to the starboard side. No one could reach the mast, and even the most nimble sailors stumbled. The direwolves took cover under the sides of the cog. Robb realized what that meant. Fall down, he yelled to his men. Reyes, nigh turning side, eyes to it. The tattooed man blew one last blast, and the squall grew into a titanic storm. The screaming drowned out all sound, but Robb could see the terrible horn shimmer with a white fire, and the muscles in the hornblower's chest twitch and the bird tattoo convulse, as if it desperately needed to escape. The planks of the Silver Eagle cracked, and the rafters holding up the aft and forecastle shattered. The archers on the tottering platforms fell along with wood, ropes, and sail. The mast broke and the boom fell onto the deck. Behind him, Robb heard screams of fear and pain. He turned to see the famed walls of Seaguard tumbling down. At last the shriek ended when the hornblower collapsed, mouth full of blood and lips blistered. Blood gushed from the mute's nose, lips, and even the chest. The bird of prey blood red. One of Euron's mongrels snatched away the horn before it could fall. No one gave a shit about the tattooed man. The crow's eye laughed, surveying the hell the devil horn had wrought. It was a strange boast. The Silver Eagle and the Defiance had suffered greatly, and the newly erected platforms on the Seaguard ships were broken. Gaps and fissures could be seen on hulls and huge rips on the sails, but the cogs had not sunk. The Ironborn were not so lucky. The Igo ships in the wake of the horn blast were crippled, masts fallen, hull breached, keels broken. Besides dead bodies, the waters of Iron Man's Bay were littered with the prows of wrecked longships. Euron Greyjoy had damaged the Maester fleet. He had destroyed his own, though, or at least the longships that engaged the galleys and cogs. Euron knew he would be defeated, Robb realized, so he protected his retreat by sacrificing his own. The fighting men struggled to recover from the blasts of the horn. The direwolves had no such trouble. After the third blast, Grey Wind, Ghost, and Nymeria cleared the deck, killing the stunned Reavers with teeth and fangs. The Stark sigils were covered in blood, but none of it was their own. Even a horn from hell could not stop a direwolf. "Lord Stark, what should we do?" Sir Michael said. He dispatched a wounded Ironborn with a sword thrust through the eye. "Sink the rest of the longships. Our ships are in no position to pursue," Robb said. The Silence departed west, leaving behind the carnage. The other ships were too crippled to follow. The water was thick with blood, corpses, and debris. Ironmen were clubbed or stabbed to death when they reached shore, most simply drowned in their armor. The fish in Ironman's Bay would feast for weeks. The Silver Eagle limped back to the wharves, passing the barges and merchant boats tasked to return the Northern Army to shore. As they neared Seaguard, the extent of the damage was revealed. All her walls had crumbled. Last night, when the Silver Eagle sailed out, a bright moon and stars shone on a dozen towers. None remained. Small folk, men too old to fight, women and children had taken refuge in the walled town. How many had died when Euron ordered the horn blown? How many had been trapped in the toppled towers? It was a ghastly thought that they were helpless to protect the weak from Euron's wrath. The Silver Eagle had lost a mast, sails, the top, and most of the oars on the port side. Still, the war galley fared better than most ships, and far better than Seaguard. The town was ruined, the docks survived, but brewhouses and market stalls had not. Everywhere Robb could see signs of destruction and hear the sounds of mourning. The rivermen were stunned, silent in shock. "Lord Maester, I am sorry that we could not help Seaguard more," Robb said. "My lord, you have nothing to be sorry for. It was Euron and his horn from hell. Had we fought at the walls, even more would have died, and the Ironborn might have overcome us and taken Seaguard." A sorrowful Jason Master replied. "Where did he get such a thing?" Sir Misol asked. "I can tell you. A man wearing a lamb's wool tunic of green and black over mail was escorted by Wylus. 24 Ironborn men stood uneasily guarded by Wendell and Manderly knights." "Who are you, sir? And why are you not in chains?" Robb asked. The Ironborn captain's face was handsome, but ruddy, the product of life spent on boats. "Lord Stark, this man claims that he is opposed to Euron Greyjoy," Wylus said. "The Crow's Eye is a kinslayer, a blackguard, and a far worse monster than the scum, that man, the Silence, the support, Aisha, Beelin's daughter," the man said, fingering the seven-pointed star, pinning his sable cloak. "My name is Baelor Blacktide, Lord of Blacktide." "I knew your father," Jason said. "He was a good man fighting for a bad cause. I do not fight for Euron. I am spying on him." Balon Greyjoy fell to his death from a bridge 2 moons ago. The next day, Euron returned to the Iron Isles. He claimed the Seastone Chair and the Iron Fleet, Baelor said. "So Euron murdered his brother to become king. But what of Balon's children?" Robb asked. "I am certain he did. At the Moot, some captains supported Asha, others Theon, but Euron had a mute blow the Dragonhorn and declared that the Ironborn would conquer all of Westeros. And then the fools elected him the new Iron King," Baelor said. "Isn't Theon his father's heir?" Robb asked. "This Edsham has been away from the islands for 10 years. He knows as much about longships as you do. Asha would have made an excellent queen. Balon was mad, Aeron is madder, and Euron is the maddest of all. He will bring doom on the Iron Isles, and perhaps the 7 kingdoms." Asha fled with Theon to escape being murdered by her uncle. "Tell me more about this horn," Robb said. "Euron claims he found the horn in Valyria, but Lord Horlaw believes he stole it from warlocks. The man who blew the horn at the Kingsmoot is dead, and his lungs were charred black. Euron says the horn can bind dragons to his will," Baelor said. "Dragons?" Robb asked. "A madman who ripped out the tongues of his men would do far worse with a dragon. How could you elect a kinslayer as your king? Lord Stark, men are fools, and the Ironborn more foolish than most, but many of us would see Euron deposed. His brother, the Damfair, is high priest of the drowned god. He opposes Euron, so do Asha and Theon, and Lord Harlaw and several others. But everyone fears the Crow's Eye. He would not hesitate to kill us all." Baelor said, "And the dragons. How will Euron find dragons?" Robb said. "After Seaguard, he plans to sail to Essos to marry Daenerys Targaryen and bring her and her dragons back to Westeros." Baelor said, "Dragons do not answer to gods or men. Why would they listen to a kraken?" Maxwell said. "The horn. There is magic in the horn, and the Crow's Eye controls it," Baelor said. Robb was tallying the casualties when bells rang in the army camp. 1 in 10 of the Northmen had died on the ships. More were injured and unable to fight. Most of the losses had come, not in the heat of battle, but from the Dragonhorn. When the fore and aft castle and the crow's nests had fallen down, it was no comfort that the Ironborn deaths were greater. "Lord Stark, a large force of men from the north, 2 stone towers connected by a bridge," the Outrider said. "Fucking Freys," the Great Jon spat. "Where were they when we were fighting?" "The Freys are always late. They are famous for it," Patrick Maester said. "Edmure would have been married only 3 or 4 days ago. Why are they here?" Robb said. He walked out, guarded by Dacey, Patrick, and the small Jon. He passed a tent where Talisa and the Wintertown boys were setting broken bones and treating wounds with wine and vinegar. That included small folk who had fled the town with their children and their meager possessions to seek shelter in the countryside. Lord Stark, lame Lothar, Frey rode at the head of the procession, wearing an absurd feathered hat over his fleshy face. Narrow piggish eyes swept over the army camp. He was accompanied by several knights, wearing other sigils, 3 sprigs of mistletoe, a black pitchfork, and a golden heron with a silver fish in its beak. I congratulate you on your great victory over the squids. You did not come south for that. Why are you here? Robb asked. With muddy roads, it would have taken the Frey men over a day to ride 50 miles. They must have left the twins even as the Silver Eagle sailed from Seagard. My father prepared a great marriage feast for Admir Tully. Alas, you could not attend. So, Lord Walder wishes to bring you meat and drink, my lord. Victuals and dishes from the wedding. The great Jon snorted. How? Your men are mounted on palfreys. Where are the wagons? Where are the cooks and the servants? They are coming south, my lord, but the wagons would take them too long to reach Seagard. Our men have set up feast tents at 7 Streams, and dug fire pits, and erected pavilions. Your mother and the other river lords wait to greet you there. Lothar said unctuously, 7 Streams, a village directly north of the Blue Fork, was half the distance to the twins. It was larger than Hagsmire, full of bogs and bad roads. After Seagard, Robb had planned to follow the Blue Fork south to Fairmarket to seek news of Jon Snow and his sisters. Lord Stark, our forces are low on provisions. I had hoped to feast you at our castle, but after the Ironborn attack, Patrick Mallester said. Seagard was in no shape to host any meal. We have wine, my lord, barrels of ale, casks of mead, ale, cider, everything you could wish to quench your thirst, Lothar said. Very well. My men will attend tomorrow, Robb said. He turned to dismiss the Freys and returned to the wounded. The cold rain did not stop the boom of activity. Robb spent the morning speaking to captains and watching the Manderleys and Wintertown boys examine the damage done to the cogs. There was much talk of masts, keels, rudders, hulls, and other nautical terms. Robb listened, nodded, and authorized gold and silver to pay for repairs. Gary noted the amounts of each ship on parchment, while carpenters and mates oversaw sailors swarming on board, hammering nails, bracing planks, and jury-rigging sails and beams with spare canvas and wood. Clever boys dove into the harbor to salvage parts from the long ships. Robb posted lookouts on the Cape of Eagles to ensure that the Crow's Eye did not return. And over the last night, Northern soldiers with the help of the Mallisters rescued innocent victims from the rubble. Seagard had suffered a sharp blow from the Crow's Eye, but would recover. Lord Karstark and the Great Jon had already gone to the feast with their men. The Glovers and the Flints followed, along with the mountain men. Some Northmen chose to stay near Seagard, but for most, the allure of ale and mead overcame any dislike of the Freys. The horses were saddled, and Talisa left orders to oversee the wounded, out of the Wintertown boys. Only Jerry would attend. The boy had kept his nerve on the Silver Eagle and was a great help to Robb at the docks. The Manderleys would serve as an escort along with the other members of his honor guard, Dacy Mormont, Eddard Karstark, and the small Jon. Only the dire wolves were not eager to leave. Grey Wind growled and snapped, while Nymeria snarled and sulked. Finally, they began the ride to 7 Streams. The wolves were restless. Even Ghost bristled, his ears erect, and the fur on his back raised. The trio of dire wolves watched the men with narrowed eyes, bared teeth and pointed tails. One would take a place near Talisa, while the others prowled and hunted far ahead. Once again, Robb wished that Jon was by his side. His brother could slip into the bond with Ghost with ease. Robb loved Grey Wind dearly, but he was too busy with duties to the north and the war to explore the connection with the dire wolf. Then he thought of Sansa's lady, who had been killed by his father. Had the gods cursed Ned Stark for that crime? They had traveled over an hour on the muddy road when a band of outriders came. A knight and his squire approached until Grey Wind howled. The palfrey skittered and the pony bucked, throwing the boy and his longbow onto the soft ground. Nymeria growled and the pony ran away, almost trampling the boy. The Frey knight raised his shield and spear, but at an angry cry from the Smauzen held day. That animal nearly killed my squire, the knight yelled. That animal is a dire wolf, sire, and if you attack a Stark wolf, you will lose more than your squire, Sir Mitchell Redfort said. The Vale Knight was fully armed and armored. Enough, Robb said. Why are you here? We are still many miles away from Seven Stream. At least 24 men rode behind the Free Knight. Pardon, Lord Stark. Another man with the sigil of the twins said, Lothar asked us to make certain you reach the feast. Why would we not reach the village? This is the only road north, Dacey said. The Frey Knight leered at the Mormont air. There may be brigands and thieves lurking, deserters and bandits like this brotherhood without banners. These are my father's lands, Black Walder, and the Eagles need no help protecting our allies. Patrick Mallister said hotly, Very well, we will ride ahead to announce that you are coming. The Free Knight turned away and led his companions north. The dire wolves glared as they left. They made the rest of the trip in silence, with the only sound of the rain beating down on their heads. Ghost and Nymeria had disappeared, although Robb did not doubt Grey Wind's littermates were around, if unseen. They heard the music coming over the hill, a jangling rattle of some bells, and badly played flutes and pipes. The obnoxious din sounded more like a dirge than a wedding. They passed the rise and the camps appeared below them, next to the headwaters of the Blue Fork. 3 great feast tents stood open in the middle of the pavilion, surrounded by dozens of Frey tents and wagons loaded with ale and wine. In the feast tents, hundreds of men crowded the benches and made toasts before emptying their tankards. Robsher could hear the Greychon along with Umbermen belt out a bawdy song. The drinking must have been going on for hours, and still the wenches rushed about, filling up horns and mugs like their lives depended on it. Outside the tents, serving men turned huge joints of meat on spits above open fires. A welcoming party of Freys walked to greet them. Lame Lothar led the group, but there was also Sir Raymond and his 3 sons, including the odious Black Walder that had met them on the road. 6 other sons of Lord Walder stood by, but Robb did not see Steffron, Perwyn, or Olivar. Grey Wind stepped in front of Talisa, his teeth bared. Lord Stark, welcome, Lothar began. I am afraid your wolf will have to stay outside. He will frighten the servants. The dire wolf in question snarled. Black Walder and Lothar stood their ground, but the other men wilted. Robb tried to calm his companion with a quiet word. The Grey Wind only shook the rain off, the beads of water landing on the Freys. Grey Wind belongs with me. He will be happier in the kennel with a leg of mutton, a Frey man said. The wolf growled, a rumble that Robb had heard only in battle. Robb stepped forward. Lead me to the feast. Frey squires and pages rushed out to take their horses. Robb sat at the crowded high table. The Freys had wished to seat him between Raymond and Lothar, but Robb chose instead to save those seats for Lady Catelyn and Talisa. Lame Lothar said that the rains had delayed them, but his mother would arrive with the other rivermen. Sir Mitchell and Sir Rowland stood watch, taking turns with Robin Flint and Donna Locke. His guard was forced to sit lower, mixed with Lord Walder's sons and grandsons. The food had yet to arrive, but the ale, mead, and wine flowed free and fast. The few platters of meat vanished as soon as the servers passed the tent flaps. The great Jon drank and sang and drank. His voice carried through the hall, even drowning out the terrible musicians who could barely carry a tune. Is this too loud for you, my lady? Robb shouted. If this is a northern wedding feast, I will not wish to get married. Talisa replied. Robb's eyebrows arched in faux outrage. But what about little Ned Stark? The heir to Winterfell must have a father and a mother. Our child will, and we do not know whether it is a boy or a girl. We could name her Lyanna or Minisa after your grandmothers, Talisa said. We will be married at Winterfell, my lady. If the gods be good, Jon and my sisters will be there, and Bran and Rickon. Robb said. Their talk was interrupted by a tall blonde boy. Jerry rushed over. Something is wrong. I did not see any Tully men or any of the Riverlord sigils in the camp. The Pipers, the Vances, the Blackwoods, they are not here, my lord. Elia would have sent Tully guards with Lady Catelyn, and as for the Riverlords, a few might have stayed at the Twins with their liege, but others, like Mark Piper and Carol Vance, would be eager to hear of any battle versus the Ironborn. Yesterday, Lothar had told him that his mother and the rivermen waited at 7 Streams. Go to the Karstarks, the Manderleys, and the Small John. "Tell them to arm themselves," Robb said. At the feast, given the great heat and the cramped quarters, few wore mail. The exception was Sir Michael, who remained in plate armor. The young boy nodded and slunk away. Lothar Frey stood up, leaning on an ornate walking stick. "We have a special dish for you, Lord Stark." The drums pounded as two serving men carried a weighty platter to the dais. Robb placed his hand on Talisa's knee with an assurance he did not feel. "Lothar, where is my mother? Why is she not at the feast?" "Lady Stark won't be joining us," Lothar sneered. A Frey man uncovered the silver lid and revealed the head of a black wolf, freshly slaughtered, blood still dripping on the plate. The music stopped as the pipers, drummers, and flute players threw away their instruments and pulled out crossbows. Grey wind exploded into action, knocking over the table to form a crude bulwark. Still, the table was too low, and only Mitchell Redfort was fully armed. Crossbow bolts hit Donil Locke and Sir Roland Wainwood in the chest, killing both men. Sir Ray Mitchell stepped in front of Robb, and 3 quarrels stuck to the red castle on his shield. "Northmen, we have been betrayed." Robb threw his tankard of wine into Ryman Frey's face, dodging the long axe that slammed into the table. Raymond was fat, slow, and drunk, but there were a dozen others behind him. Below the high table, chaotic fighting had broken out. 5 Frey men tried to wrestle the Grachan down. The Small John ripped a table off its trestle and smashed it over the head of several Frey knights. Galbert Glover rose to his feet, only to be cracked over the back of the head, and through it all, the crossbows kept their deadly fire, killing Robb's guard. Owen Norrie died. Robin Flint, Morgan Little. They would not survive the crossbows. A white blur ran through the tent, jumped onto the tables, and landed amidst the false musicians. Ghost tore a man's arm off and then lunged at another, ripping the throat open. The white direwolf killed and killed and killed, and crossbows fell silent for a moment. As Frey soldiers attacked Ghost, Namuria appeared and fell on their rear. The she-wolf feasted on necks and arms, her bite strong enough to crush the flesh under mail and leather. But more armored men entered the battle, carrying longbows and heavy axes. Frey knights protected the remaining crossbowmen. A kennel master released a pack of wolfhounds. "Surrender, Lord Stark, and we may let you live." Lothar Frey spat. "What happened to my mother?" "She died trying to escape. We meant to capture her alive, but Sir Raymond killed her as she ran to warn you. She almost made it to her horse, but the others are our prisoners. Your uncle, Lucas Blackwood, Marks Piper, Lamont Goodbrook, Carol Vance, the bastard of Bracken. We killed all the Tully guards, though." Lothar chuckled. Robb grasped the situation quickly. Most of his men were in the tents, feasting. The Freys had men outside, surrounding the tents, armed and armored. Besides the empty tankard, his only weapon was a knife for cutting meat. But he had a wolf. He slipped into Grey Wind's mind and felt a primal rage and a great fury. The first hound leaped over the table, and Robb snapped Grey Wind's jaws about the dog's throat. The second wolfhound circled about more warily, only to be swatted away by Sir Meckel's shield. Grey Wind quickly tore the stunned beast apart. "You can't win, Stark." Black Walder killed a flint. Darren Hornwood fell. Mountain men died from crossbow bolts. Harrion and Eddard Corstark were hard-pressed, fighting back to back. The Grey Chan was finally subdued when 8 more men piled on him. Grey Wind bit through a man's arm at the elbow. Robb attacked again and again, tearing arms and knees apart. It wasn't enough. "My lord." Robb blinked. Who was calling him? The tall blonde boy appeared at his side. "My lord," Jerry said urgently. I cut a hole through the canvas. Behind them, a mere 10 feet away, was an escape route. "Lord Stark, go. I will cover your back. If I fall, take care of Maya," Sir Maxwell said. Robb hated to leave his men, but if he stayed here, they would all die. He took Talisa by the hand, and they ran, only to be hit by a volley of crossbow bolts. A quarrel sprouted in his shoulder and another whistled over his head. But a bolt punched through Talisa's back, the steel head protruding from her chest. The force turned her sideways, and 2 other quarrels struck her in the belly. She moaned and fell dead, clutching her stomach. Robb froze in shock. His father was dead, his mother, his lover, and now his unborn babe. Rage consumed him, and he went deep into Grey Wind. The dire wolf roared and charged. he evaded the knights to reach the crossbowmen. Robb killed 2 men before they could reload, but a bolt hit the direwolf, and then another, and another. Grey Wind continued the attack, but the wounded wolf was too slow now, and could no longer dodge the stinging axes and swords. More crossbow bolts slammed into him, and everything began to fade for Robb. The last thing he heard before it turned black was the mournful cry of his packmates. The blond boy stood over the warm yet unresponsive body. With the few surviving Valemen, Jerry half-carried, half-dragged Robb out of the tent before hacking away the quarrel shaft. "Is he dead?" Sir Michael said. "No, he is alive, but not there." Jerry had seen those milky white eyes before at the Red Fork, but the maester had returned to them. Robb Stark had not. Fighting raged in and out of the tents. Ghost and Nymeria guarded Robb, and Northmen fought with weapons, shields, and armor taken from dead Freys. Many were captured, but a few leaders escaped. Mitchell put on the white surcoat and removed any trace of House Stark from the body. "Jerry, run for the Blue Fork. Find a boat and take Lord Stark to safety." Mitchell put the surcoat over his plate mail. "I will distract these traitors." "How will you find me?" Jerry asked as he wrapped his arms about Robb's shoulders. "I won't, but the wolves will, and they will help me kill the fucking Freys." Saracen Mitchell raised his bloody sword. For Robb. For Robb, Jerry ran south to the river. At the sight of the curtain wall, Jerry paddled toward the reeds. Last night he traded 10 silver stags for a cordial large enough for 2. The fisherman had thrown in a hand net and 3 thick woolen blankets. The round shell-like boat was weaved from willow rods with an outer layer of bullock hide. Waterproofed with pitch, it had been a long night, watching for Frey patrols, guiding the cordial down the Blue Fork, and keeping Robb Stark alive. He had laid Robb down on the flat bottom and covered the Lord with all 3 blankets. Getting in and out of the little boat was the hardest part. So long as the weight was evenly distributed, the coracle was surprisingly stable and could float even in a few inches of water, making it well suited for the rills and brooks before the headwaters turned into the mighty Trident. He strapped the coracle to his back and, guiding Robb with his right arm, trudged up the hill to the ruins of Old Stone. The overgrown and rocky road wound twice around before reaching the summit. Beneath the castle, the woods were thick and the bushes heavy with nuts and fruits. Jerry knew which berries to pluck and how to pound the sedge tubers and nuts into a soup. Jerry made camp on top of the hill, in the ruins of the old castle. He placed Robb against the stone sepulchre, half hidden in the high grass. He took an axe out and chopped away several roots and ripped up fern bushes to make an open piece of ground large enough to sleep on. He smoothed the earth and leaned the coracle at a slant against the tomb, blocking out the mid-morning sun. After he placed a folded blanket down, Jerry moved Robb into the shadows cast by the round boat and then draped the 2 other blankets over the Lord of Winterfell. He built a fire and forced Robb to drink from the water skin. He could have gone further than Old Stones. The Blue Fork rushed southeast to Fairmarket, Ramsford, and then met the Green Fork north of Lord Harroway's town. Those were Tully lands, with river lords loyal to the Starks. But nobles of those houses had been captured at the Twins, and Robb Stark was too tempting and valuable a target. A highborn might trade him to the Freys for their lord or heir. A lowborn could simply sell the Lord of Winterfell for hundreds of gold dragons. Jerry would not risk it. He would simply wait. The boy knew the maester would come north. Jerry had been at the Golden Tooth, the Red Fork, and the God's Eye. He had seen Snow's uncanny connection with his dire wolf. The maester would find Ghost again, and with 50 miles between here and 7 Streams, Ghost would find Robb. The dire wolf could cover that distance in a few hours. There was a great deal to do before the day ended. Chop wood for the fire, carry water up the hill, forage for nuts and berries, catch trout with the net, and most importantly, build a better shelter. The walls offered some protection from wind, but with branches, leaves, and mud, Jerry could shield them from rain and cold. He was still working when he heard the wolves. Jerry scrambled up the hill and fed more wood into the fire. He grabbed a burning branch, and as the sun set, waited near the crude wooden lean-to. He heard twigs crack, a heavy panting and growls. A dozen wolves surrounded him, gnashing their teeth as they circled him. Jerry stepped back carefully, keeping his back to the shelter. A giant gray wolf with a white underbelly approached, and the smaller animals went quiet. Nymeria stared at him with hostile, dark, golden eyes. Jerry stepped aside, holding the torch high to light the way. The great she-wolf trotted forward and nuzzled Robb as if willing him to wake. Jerry tended the fire and roasted rainbow trout on sticks. Soon after, he heard heavier footsteps and the whinny of horses. The small wolves slinked off, and a white dire wolf appeared, leading men on horses. There was nothing to fear. The man in front wore a white surcoat, encrusted with dried blood. "Sarah Mitchell, good to see you. Care for roast trout?" The knight gave a tired smile as he sat down. "Jerry, I am glad to see you. This is Sir Robert Royce, Sir Andrew Tollett, Sir Ben Coldwater." The fighting went the whole night and into the morning. "The wolves led us a merry chase down the Blue Fork this afternoon." "How is Lord Robba?" Sir Robba asked anxiously. Ghost and Nymeria had settled near the young wolf. "I have kept him warm and comfortable. He is not woken, but he is no worse than last night." The words gave the knights little comfort. "How is the fighting, Cerits?" Jerry asked. "My father says the Starks are hard to kill," Sir Lovar said hesitantly. "He is not dead, though. Although I suppose if he never wakes, he can't give us any commands." "Pity, I want to kill more Freys," Tollett said. Maxwell shook his head somberly. "Half the Valemen who went to Seven Streams are dead. Cyril and Waynwood, Cyril Elbert Belmore, Cyril and Linderley. The North fared even worse. A few men escaped, Smaljunumber, the Karstark sons, but the Gratian was captured. Lord Karstark, Patrick Maester, and many others. And Lothar Frey boasted that Lady Stark was killed and Edmure Tully taken prisoner at the Twins," Mitchell said. "The Freys planned a clever ambush. We are lucky the dire wolves killed the archers and crossbowmen. Otherwise we would have all died." Robar said, "Jerry found extra twigs and shared the skewers of hot trout." The knights finished quickly and took the horses down to the river to graze and drink. Jerry offered the roast fish to the wolves, but Ghost shook his head, and Nymeria had already fallen asleep. "Where do you think we should head?" "Raventree Hall is half a day's ride south, or we can hail a skiff or barge and head to Fairmarket to send word to the Blackfish. By now all of the Riverlands will know of House Frey's betrayal," Mitchell said. "They served us meat and drink after the victory at Seaguard. The gods will curse House Frey for breaking guest right," Robar said. "If the Freys offer to trade Edmure for Lord Stark, what would the Blackfish do?" Jerry replied. "Sir Brendan is a good man," Robar protested. "But he is a Tully." "Family is before duty and honor in their words, and Edmure is his liege lord." "The Blackfish hates the Freys," Mitchell said, "but his first loyalty would be to his house. Lord Tytos has fought bravely as well, but 2 of his sons went to the Twins and are likely prisoners. Can we send a raven to Snow? We have no ravens here, and I do not know where the maester is. But have no doubt Sir Jon Snow will come for us, and he will come for House Frey." He woke at dawn, when the clouds turned bronze and gold over the God's Eye. The 5 cracked and lumped towers of Black Heron's Folly jutted into the sky. But it was still too dark to see Harrentown, the town dwarfed by the great castle. Jon dreamt of Winterfell last night, the courtyard in the shadow of the first keep, where he and Robb had trained together ever since they were big enough to walk. There they had laughed and played away from any prying eyes, pretending not to be little boys but great heroes. Aemon the Dragon Knight, or Clegane Stark, but he had been sent away to the Citadel, while Robb remained to guard the north. Grey Wind deserved to rest in the crypts of Winterfell with the other dire wolves that had served the kings of winter. And then Jon woke up. In the dream, his brother was a king of winter, wearing an open circlet of beaten bronze with 9 black iron spikes shaped as swords. But a storm of arrows and quarrels fell, and daggers rose and struck in the dark. In the fighting, Jon was too far away to reach his brother. The darkness took Robb past the broken tower, past the lich yard, and into the ironwood door of the crypts. Jon searched and searched in the dark, under the stern faces of stone Stark kings on stone thrones. He did not care about voices that muttered he was no Stark, but he could not find Robb. The light burnt out, and the tune faded into black, leaving only a dire wolf, gray and ghastly, spotted with blood, golden eyes shining sadly. He knew those eyes. Bring me home, the wolf whispered. Grey Wind deserved to rest in the crypts of Winterfell with the other dire wolves that had served the kings of winter. And then Jon woke up. Jon found Arya on the bow of the Wolfwind. His sister turned, a trace of tears in her bloodshot eyes. Jon held her tightly, and her sobs were muffled in his chest. What did you see in your dream? I saw crossbow bolts at a feast. I saw a dire wolf die. What does it mean, Jon? He wanted badly to soothe her fears, but he would not lie to RDA. Nothing good. Be strong, little sister. We will deal with whatever comes. The banner of the White Wolf fluttered as they rode to Harrenhal at the main gate, so wide that 50 men could march abreast. An old lady met them. A few servants attended her, Maester Tothmir, Lucan the armorer, and a few tired knights. The anxious look that Shallya Wyn gave them spoke volumes. Lady Wyn's eyes widened when she saw Sansa Stark. Lady Sansa, you are freed from King's Landing. Sansa curtsied. I am, my lady. Thank you for your hospitality. Jon swung off his horse and interrupted the greetings. He could see the fear. The blacksmith's burly arms trembled. Sir Malin stared down on the ground, and the maester's fingers quivered. No one, least of all, Shallya Wyn, could look him in the eyes. Bad news does not improve in the waiting. Tell me what you already know. Lord Snow, your brother was betrayed by the Freys, Lady Wyn said. Jon ignored the gasps of shock. He kept his voice flat and emotionless. How do you know? A raven from Seaguard. It came yesterday, my lord, the maester said. What else do you know? Jon said. We sent a raven to Riverrun. They confirmed that Lord Yajmer was taken prisoner at his own wedding in the Twins. Your mother, Lady Stark, was likely killed, Tothmir said. Not my mother, Jon knew, but Catelyn Tully married Ned Stark and bore him 5 children. His siblings had lost both father and mother. He wondered if he had also lost a brother. He could feel his sister's pain like a knife in the heart. Take us to the Solar, and bring me both letters. Jon walked past Lady Wyn, and Arya and Sansa followed. Wind blew through open cracks, and the slagged stone warped the stairs and walls of Kingspire Tower. Here Balesian. The Black Dread unleashed his true fury against Black Heron. A cruel fate for a cruel king. Brienne and Sandor stood guard outside while Jon read the first letter. Lord Stark defeated Euron Greyjoy in Iron Man's Bay, and Lothar Frey claimed that Lord Walder wished to share the remains of Edmure's wedding banquet with the North at Seven Streams. At the feast, Frey's attacked with axes and crossbows. Robb Stark was wounded and is missing. Many others were captured or dead. Very few men returned to Seaguard. What about Mother? Gertie asked. That is the other raven. The Freys ordered Riverrun to bend the knee. They took Lord Aedra prisoner and killed Lady Catelyn when she tried to escape. The Blackfish believes that the Freys took many hostages at the wedding. Sansa broke down sobbing. It is all my fault. Don't you see? Joffrey ordered this as revenge for my escape from King's Landing. I am the reason that Mother is dead. Jon shook his head. After the God's Eye, the Freys wanted a marriage with Robb. When that failed, they agreed to a betrothal with Edmure. Either way, a wedding would occur at the Twins. Your rescue was only a faint glimmer, and unknown to Freys or Lannisters. We cannot say when the final orders were given, but the Freys planned this treachery for a long time. Roose Bolton said others would betray the North. He may have known about Lord Walder. If that was the case, why didn't the Freys betray us at the God's Eye? Arya. They did, or at least 1,500 Freys left. Some Freys did serve loyally in the battle. Sarah Stevron, Tywin, and Olyvar, and a few of the bastards, Ser Martin, fought well. The Freys may be more cowardly about battle in the open field, or perhaps Lord Walder informed Ryman and Lothar of his treachery, but not the others. Or Tywin had already promised Roose Bolton a reward, but had yet to satisfy the Freys' price. But if I never went south, if I had never wanted to be queen, this would have not happened. We would all be still in Winterfell. Father would have not been imprisoned and beheaded. Sansa, the water has run downstream. We cannot force it back up. You did not order Ned Stark to become Hand of the King. You did not take Tyrion Lannister prisoner. You did not plan Edmure's wedding or the Frey feast. This is not a time to wail or weep. This is a time for judgment. We need to determine our next steps. Sansa stopped her tears. Do you think Robb is dead? I do not know. I saw Grey Wind die in a wolf dream, but Robb might have escaped. We should kill all the Freys. Aedye blurted out. We have no time for anger. We need to find Robb first. We need to know who lived, who died, and who was taken prisoner. Our first duty is to the north and our men. We leave in a few hours for Harroway. There is a lot to do. Ravens, prisoners, and gathering our remaining forces. What happens if Robb is dead? Arya asked. Then I am Lord of Winterfell, and the twins will burn. You have cursed us all. There is no crime so foul as murder at a wedding, and to invite your allies to a feast after a battle and slay them while they are drunk. The gods will not forget these crimes. The old woman thundered. The Tyrells had come out in force to the small council. Lady Olenna, the true power behind Highgarden, revealed her thorns, accusing Tyrell Lannister of the treachery in the Riverlands. Ravens had flown fast and furious into King's Landing that morning. The Frey wedding had been a gross violation of guest right, but the traitors' feast was seen as the greater dishonor. At the Twins, Lord Walder had taken many highborn prisoners, but at Seven Streams, the Frey hosts butchered the Northern Army. The Iron Throne had nothing to do with this. This is a dispute between Walder Frey and his liege lord, Tywin replied. That bald lie did not fool anyone. Would Walder Frey have done this without your blessing? Olenna Tyrell replied. The Queen of Thorns was famous for her sharp tongue. Nor was she wrong. Tyrion thought, Walder Frey was not a brave man. He would have required guarantees from the Iron Throne. And Walder was greedy. What promises had his father made? Will the Iron Throne strip House Frey of their lands? How will you punish them for breaking guest right? Oberin smiled at Lord Tyburn's discomfort. Why does this matter? We should be glad that our enemies kill each other. Bachelis said. The Tyrells and their retainers glared at Littlefinger. He has prisoners, Baelish, from every house in the Reach. Are you too stupid to realize that their lives are at risk? Olenna did not need to clarify who he was. Tyrion knew from experience how unpleasant Jon Snow's personal attention could be, and Podrick had seen an entire company of bloody mummers crucified at Harrenhal. What of Robb Stark? Do we know if he is alive or not? There are conflicting reports. The Freys paraded around a body with a dire wolf head and nailed a crown on top. But there are others who say that the young wolf was badly injured but escaped when his dire wolf was killed. Tywin said, one dire wolf head, but the North had 3 at the Red Fork, and the White Wolf is alive. Thart said that if Robb Stark died, Snow was heir to Winterfell. Tyrion shuddered. What about our lords? We paid gold to ensure their safety. They are still prisoners. The wolves released our soldiers and knights, but kept the High Lords. Ser Garland said, the Freys have taken prisoners as well. Edmure Tully, and many others from the north and the Riverlands. Lord Karstark, Lord Umber, a Mormont girl, the Maester heir, Wallace Manderly. The north has lost thousands of men. House Stark has been crippled. The Rivermen will have to bend the knee to the Freys. What if Robb Stark and Jon Snow rally their forces and attack House Frey? Jaime asked. Tywin gave a scornful shrug. How? Who will fight for the Starks, the Blackfish, the Karstarks? Walder Frey only needs to threaten to hang their lords. The young wolves can defeat the Freys in the field. They have been outnumbered before, and still won, Garland said. Walder Frey is no fool. He will not seek out battle. He will squat at the twins and keep his captives close. Even an army of 20,000 would need months to besiege the twins, and Snow has neither the men nor the time. His brother is wounded. Even if he is the heir, a bastard will have trouble controlling the north. He may have to trade his prisoners to free the northern lords. And if his brother dies, he will need to secure his rule, Tywin said. So that was his father's plan. Tywin Lannister would trade northern hostages for his men. And if Snow beheaded a few Tyrell bannermen, all the better. The Freys would weaken the Reach, the Riverlands and the North simultaneously. The cost was honor and reputation. But when had his lord father ever cared about that? The Lannisters would slough off as much blame as possible to Walder Frey. It was clever, except how many prisoners do the Freys have? 8 Northmen, a dozen heirs of the River Lords and Edmure Tully. Tywin replied, Jon Snow doesn't give a shit about House Tully. He is not his brother, the Red Viper said. Snow has 50 squires alone at the Golden Tooth and hundreds of knights at River Run. He captured more at the Red Fork, including many of our most powerful lords, and he has important hostages from almost every house in the Reach. The Freys do not have enough prisoners to trade, Tyrion said. The Freys took Lord Umber and Lord Karstark prisoner. Those 2 houses are the strongest bannermen for the Starks, Snow will need their support to rule the north, Tywin said. Will he? The small Jon Umber and the Karstark sons served in Robb Stark's battle guard. They may already be loyal to House Stark, Tyrion said. What if Snow doesn't care about Winterfell? What if he only wants revenge? Jaime said. Then you should expect your lords to lose their heads. Oberyn Martell smirked. The words hung over the small council meeting like a black cloud. His father had hatched a clever scheme, but like all conspiracies, it relied on his accomplices. Lord Tywin did not bother to sully his own hands. When Tyrion was young, the Septon at Casterly Rock declared, "They that lie with dogs shall rise with fleas." But the Freys were worse than dogs. They were rats, greedy, treacherous, and disloyal. It was good that Lord Walder hid in his twin castles. Rats did not fare well against wolves in the wild. Owen Fossaway waited until Sir Richard Withers waved him through the cordon of tire guards. Since the debacle of the Wildfire wedding, Lady Olenna spent a great deal of time away from the Maiden Vault, holding court at the Godswood, overlooking the Blackwater Rush. The reason was simple. Among the elm, alder, and cottonwood trees, there was no place for secret tunnels or spies. The 2 score guards in green flushed out any listeners. Had we been here that night, we might have seen Snow sail away on the river, after burning the mountain alive. A young Tyrell cousin exclaimed, "The harbor is 2 miles away." Olenna said, "You would have seen a green dot in the distance. And why would anyone want to see a man burn to death? The mountain was more a monster than a man." Sir Garland said. He coughed loudly and bowed to the noble ladies. The Queen of Thorns waved away Marguerite's companions, leaving only the 3 Tyrells in front of the great oak heart tree, covered with smokeberry vines and dark red flowers. Young Owen, you have heard the dreadful news of the weasels and how they conspired with the lions, Olenna said. Bits and pieces. My lady, I was at the great sept of Baelor today. The High Sparrow declared the Freys apostates, and that anyone who aided them would be banished from the worship of the Seven. The Faith are furious about the violation of guest right and the massacre at the feast, Owen said. The Queen of Thorns shrugged. The Septons enjoy ranting and raving, but when has the Faith done anything meaningful? Not since the dance of the dragons led to their deaths. Sir, what do you think Snow will do? Lady Marjorie asked. Will he seek revenge? For the betrayal at the feast? Most certainly. You heard Robb Stark's oath at Redgrass Field. Jon Snow is his heir. What heir will not avenge his brother? But will he kill his prisoners? Execute our lords? Marjorie asked. Owen scratched his head. Why would he do that? They had nothing to do with the Black Wedding or the Traitors' Feast. But the Lannisters did. Walder Frey would not commit these crimes without the protection of the Iron Throne, and the Reach is in league with the Lions, Garland said. Perhaps you should question that alliance first. I do not know. Maester Snow is not the most predictable of men. Owen rubbed the large bruise on the back of his neck. But Jon is not hateful. He is not cruel. We paid him ransom for the squires, men-at-arms, and knights. The lords were kept to assure our good behavior. We have done nothing wrong. But does Snow know that? He made many terrible threats after the God's Eye. What if he believes the Reach supported this betrayal? Olenna said, I doubt he is putting the blame on Mace Tyrell. Perhaps you could write your friend a letter, so he will know that for certain. Marjorie said, Owen could do more than write a letter. He could invoke the personal favor, but it would be a great mistake to let the Tyrells know about that arrangement. And he doubted that Jon would murder the fathers and uncles of his friends at the Citadel. How could my raven reach him? I do not know where he is. We do. Our spy saw the Wolf Wind sailing to the north shore of the God's Eye. He must be headed to Harrenhal. Garland said. Owen shook his head. No. Where's Robb Stark? No one knows, sire. It is a great mystery. Marjorie said, Find Robb and you will find Jon. He will not stay at Harrenhal long. He will be on the move. If Robb is dead, I wonder what he will do. But I do not think he will kill our men. I believe in Jon Snow. The North may be hard and cold, but he was raised with honor.